And Nash, this is Marquez. Can you come on for me, please? Nash, can you, can you can you come on for me, Nash? I see you on. Can you do me a
Okay.
count?
Sure.
Yep.
Testing 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you, Nash. Do you see? You need to see the room.
Yes, I do. Great.
Kenneth,
Thank you.
Kenneth, can you show me the room?
I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Deployment, yeah. I mean, I live on the Bill, I think we all should. You can have that.
I am calling to order this meeting. This is a regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I am Phil Mendelson, Chair of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Tuesday, September 17, 2024. The time is 1:13 in the afternoon, and we are meeting in room 500 of the Johnny Wilson Building. Although I believe one member is participating virtually. This is a regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole. We have a number of measures for markup in the Committee of the Whole, as well as a number of measures that have been reported out of other committees that pass through the Committee of the Whole for the what do we call it? Making sure they comply with our rules. And so the legislative meeting, which will be an additional legislative meeting, will start after this Committee of the Whole. This meeting, as I said, is in room 500. It is being broadcast on Council Cable Channel 13. That's cable television providers. And it's also available on the council's website, which is www.dccouncil.gov. We first need to make sure that we have a quorum of members. Mr. Cash, would you call the roll, please?
Chairman Mendelson.
Present.
Councilmember Allen. Here. Councilmember Bonds.
Here.
Councilmember Fruman.
Present.
Councilmember Gray.
Here.
Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Lewis George.
Here.
Councilmember McDuffie.
Here.
Councilmember Nadeau.
Here.
Councilmember Parker.
Here.
Councilmember Pinto.
Present.
Councilmember Robert White.
Present.
Councilmember Trahan White. Councilmember Trahan White. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. We have the Secretary's report of committee filings. I'm going to recognize the Chair Pro Tem, Mr. McDuffie.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to move to waive the reading of the Secretary's report.
Is there a motion to waive the reading of the report? Is there discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
This is on the committee filings.
Okay, never mind, Mr. Chairman.
If there is no further discussion on the motion to waive the reading of the Secretary's report of committee filings, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the reading of the Secretary's log of introductions and referrals. Again, I'll recognize the Chair Pro Tem, Councilmember McDuffie.
And I will move to waive the reading of the Secretary's log of introductions and referrals.
There's been a motion to waive the reading of the log. Is there discussion? Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask for you to reconsider a re-referral of a bill that may have been inadvertent. In 2021, I introduced a bill called the FUN Act, which is around additional community engagement input when the mayor decides to utilize public property for another purpose than initially intended. This bill was sequentially referred to the Committee on Recreation, Libraries, and Youth Affairs and the Committee on Business Economic Development. The Committee on Recreation, Libraries, Youth Affairs had a markup on the bill and approved it in November of 2022. In July of 2023, the FUN Act was reintroduced because of the new council period. The FUN Act was again sequentially referred to CBED and RLYA, which again had a markup of the bill and approved it again. So now this bill is under consideration for the Committee on Business Economic Development. My hope is that we may be able to move it before the end of the council period. And I worry that re-referring it again to two additional new committees is just going to hold it up procedurally for a bill that's already gone through 3 years of process.
Do you know the bill number?
Bill 25-427.
Let me take it under advisement. If I'm going to do a re-referral, I could do that on October 1st.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Henderson.
I wanted to ask a question about the referral for Bill 25-947, the Entertainment Establishment Employee Safety Amendment Act of 2024. You referred it to the Committee of the Whole with comments from the Committee on Business and Economic Development, even though it pertains to specific issues dealing with the Committee on Business and Economic Development as it deals with alcohol licenses and retailers.
Yes, I don't have the bill in front of me, so I do not remember why I made the referral that way, but I do remember. I believe the referrals to the committee of the whole with comments from Business and Economic Development. Do you want to send me a memo explaining giving me the arguments?
Sure.
Okay,
I do believe that if it was just being referred to the Committee on Business and Economic Development, we can address this issue in a more fulsome manner, given
this is a
that,
bill you introduced.
yes, sir.
Yes, and I believe it was introduced just this week. Yes, so I'd be happy to look at your reasoning.
Thank you.
Yes. Anything further? We haven't had this much excitement over the log in many months. The motion is to waive the reading of the log, and as I said, I will look at both of these bills for October 1st. All those in favor of the motion to waive the reading of the log, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have a number of measures for markup in the committee of the whole. The first is Bill 25-287, entitled Counseling Compact Approval Act of 2024. This bill was sequentially referred first to the Committee on Health, chaired by Councilmember Henderson, and then the Committee of the Whole. The Committee of the Whole has not made any significant changes, maybe even zero changes to what the Committee on Health marked up. And so I'm going to turn to Councilmember Henderson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill 25-287, the Counseling Compact Act of 2024, was introduced by Councilmember Gray along with Councilmembers Freeman, Allen, myself on May 5th, 2023. This was jointly referred to the Committee of the Whole and the Committee on Health. The bill authorizes the mayor to enter into an interstate counseling compact, enabling licensed professional counselors to practice in other member states without needing additional licenses. The compact standardizes licensure requirements and disciplinary processes, ensuring consistency across states while preserving each state's regulatory authority. It establishes the Counseling Compact Commission to oversee implementation, maintain a coordinated licensure database, and ensure compliance. The compact facilitates data sharing, supports military families by easing licensure portability, and aims to enhance public access to professional counseling services by reducing the barriers to interstate practice. I want to note that the National Counseling Compact has not started issuing privileges just yet. It is working towards granting privileges by the end of 2024, pending the full implementation of the required database and application systems, which are still in development. The Committee on Health unanimously marked up this bill on June 20th, 2024, and I'm happy to see us moving it forward in the Committee of the Whole. I encourage my colleagues to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson. This bill is before us for markup. What's being voted on is the committee print attached to the Committee of the Whole report. But as I said, it's the same as what the Committee on Health moved. If there's no further discussion, the vote will be on the print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. All those in favor of the print, say aye.
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 Opposed? The vote is unanimously in favor. I'll move the report. This would be the Committee of the Whole report with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion? By voice vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously, and the record should note Councilmember Tran White is present. The next, excuse me, it's been a while since I've done this. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed?
Would that be the report of the Committee of the Whole?
Yes, sir.
And otherwise, the record is complete?
Yes, sir.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal impact?
No.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for markup is Bill 25-570, entitled Cardiac Planning and Response, CPR Amendment Act of 2024. This bill builds upon language in the fiscal year 2017 Budget Support Act of 2016, which mandated the placement of an automated external defibrillator, or AED, in every school that would be readily available for athletic events, and also required AED and cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR training for athletic coaches, trainers, and school nurses. Bill 25-570, the bill before us, would amend that law to require each school to adopt a cardiac emergency response plan, or CERP. The CERP would set guidelines for who on a school staff would respond to a cardiac arrest and how they would respond to such an event. The CERP also considers staff training, maintenance of AEDs, and dissemination of the plan. Recent high-profile cases have brought national attention to sudden cardiac arrest in young people, particularly in school settings and during athletic activities. Approximately 23,000 children under the age of 18 experience cardiac arrest annually in the United States. Sudden cardiac arrest in youth can be deadly, but as testified to by the Fire and Emergency Medical Services Assistant Fire Chief Andre Edwards, with quick action to restore the victim's heart rate, the likelihood of survival increases dramatically. Bill 25-570, again, the bill before, standardizes the response across schools through requiring the adoption of CERPs so that school staff across the city are prepared to respond quickly to cardiac arrest. Adopting CERPs is not a novel concept. A number of states have mandated CERPs in their schools, and the report lists the states. The committee print requires the Office of the State Superintendent for Education, or OSSE, and Fire and Emergency Medical Services to collaborate to develop model CERPs that schools could adopt. While not all sudden cardiac arrests are preventable, with the appropriate training, procedures, and emergency response highlighted in a CERP, we can prevent deaths. For that reason, the committee, assuming that this is adopted, recommends the adoption of the committee print for Bill 25-570. This bill was introduced on November 9th, 2023 by Councilmember McDuffie and co-introduced by 8 members. The Committee of the Whole held a hearing on this bill on July 10th of this year. And as I recall, there was no testimony or comments in opposition to the bill. I move the print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilmember McDuffie.
I just wanted to thank you and your team for working with me and my team. As you will note, I introduced this bill alongside 8 of my colleagues because all students and student athletes in particular deserve to receive high quality and immediate life-saving care in response to cardiac arrest. And as a father of 2 student athletes, this legislation takes on special importance to me. This bill expands upon the work that I led as chairperson of the Committee on Judiciary. In 2015, some will recall that I introduced the Office of Unified Communications Training, CPR, and Modernization Amendment Act of 2015. Among many other things, this bill required the Office of Unified Communications and FEMS to conduct a district-wide CPR training program for district students, employees, and residents. The council expanded upon and incorporated this bill in the fiscal year 2017 Budget Support Act of 2016. This law additionally mandated the placement of an AED in every school that would be readily available for every athletic event. It required an AED and CPR training for every athletic coach, trainer, and school nurse, and mandated public and public charter high schools to provide CPR and AED training. This law also requires schools to establish procedures for responding to cardiac arrest. And I want to thank, again, you and your team for working with us to get this bill ready to be passed so that we can start working with our schools and agencies to ensure that our students continue to be safe. I'd also like to thank the American Heart Association and 2023 Miss District of Columbia, Jude Mabone, for working with me and my team on this bill. And as I mentioned during the breakfast meeting earlier this morning, I definitely want to work with you and your team between first reading and second reading to perhaps amend the bill to address some of the concerns with certain language that the American Heart Association has raised with our staffs. And so I'm hoping that you're willing to have that conversation, perhaps to make some slight tweaks to make this bill even better.
Thank you, Councilor McDuffie. Of course, I'll be happy to work with you. Further discussion on the print? The vote will be on the print with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I'm going to move the report with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. Is there discussion? On the report, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed,
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal impact?
There is not.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for markup in the committee of the whole is Bill 25-581, Medical Cannabis Clarification and Program Enforcement Amendment Act of 2024. This bill was referred sequentially first to the Committee on Business and Economic Development, chaired by Councilmember McDuffie, and then to the Committee of the Whole. I'm going to turn first to Councilmember McDuffie if you want to present anything regarding this bill.
Thank you, Chairman. And not to rehash all the details that you're going to describe in your statement. So I'm going to try to make this brief with brief and air quotes. This bill makes permanent several of the emergencies that I introduced and the council has passed on the medical cannabis program and goes beyond those emergencies to create a strong regulatory framework for a medical cannabis program in the District of Columbia. This bill has been years of work between all of the emergencies, community input, and input from members of this body that I've received from constituents as well and those in the industry, and significant research made by my team, Donnie Crawford in particular, the chairman's team, and members of other of my colleagues and their teams. And so I want to acknowledge all that work that's been done on this bill, as well as with APCA and their team, the Office of the Attorney General, council offices, public stakeholders, when we got it to mark up in the Committee of Business and Economic Development before it went to Cal. I'm happy to see the collaboration between our offices from over the summer come to fruition in the committee print with the changes made to the protest process, ABC board licensing considerations for daycares, and additional clarity for preschools after CBED's markup. And I want to thank Councilmember Allen and his team for working with me and my team during the CBED markup process. I also want to thank all the public stakeholders because there have been many who have worked with my office over the years to help inform the council's medical cannabis policy. And finally, I think I did this twice, but it looks like it's the third time. I want to thank the chairman and his staff for working with my staff, particularly my legislative director, Donnie Crawford, for getting this where we are today.
Thank you, Mr. McDuffie. So let me speak a little further. What we'll be voting on is the committee print attached to the Committee of the Whole report. This bill would allow the Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Administration, or ABCA, to issue temporary non-resident medical cannabis registration cards valid for up to a year. It would allow ABCA to waive the application fee for testing laboratories. It would allow licensed testing laboratories to receive and test samples from medical cannabis patients and conduct quality assurance and research and development for cultivation centers and manufacturers. It would amend the definition of social equity applicant to include qualifying arrests and convictions of family members. It allows APCA to extend the public comment period for medical cannabis licenses. It clarifies which persons have standing to protest the issuance of a license. It clarifies that APCA has the authority to issue cease and desist letters to unlicensed establishments. And it clarifies that APCA has authority to take enforcement actions against commercial property owners renting to unlicensed establishments. The committee print, which is what we'll be voting on from the Committee of the Whole, builds off of the print approved by the Committee on Business and Economic Development. by requiring the Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Board to consider the proximity and impacts of a medical cannabis retailer on nearby daycare centers, granting standing to protest a medical cannabis retail license to abutting property owners and commercial tenants, revising the basis on which persons with standing may protest medical cannabis retail licenses, and expanding the APCA board's ability to fine and summarily close an unlicensed establishment. I don't intend to go through all the details of the bill, but I was asked to speak to why the committee print does not have a buffer requirement that's different for daycare centers. And there are two reasons that are outlined in the report. First, it would significantly impact the ability of medical cannabis retailers to find suitable storefront locations. There are currently 458 licensed daycare centers in the district, many of which are clustered in or around commercial or mixed-use zoning districts, which are districts that are otherwise appropriate for cannabis facilities. Second, Title 25 does not include, Title 25 is the ABC regulations, does not include daycare centers as a sensitive site for alcoholic beverage licensees. And so it would be distinguishing cannabis, which in many ways there's less evidence around it being, having, what do I want to say, nuisance factors. The district's medical cannabis market is at a critical juncture. Unlicensed cannabis establishments have proliferated, and the current medical cannabis law lacks sufficient clarity on key issues such as standing to protest. The bill before us remedies this situation by setting clear standards for licensed protests, centralizing enforcement authority with the ABC Board, or APCA, strengthening existing enforcement authority, and giving business owners who are trying to do the right thing more time to comply with the law. Given the importance of all of these changes to the vitality of our medical cannabis market and to the safety and health of the district residents, the committee, assuming that this is adopted, recommends council approval of the print for Bill 25-581. This bill was introduced by myself and Councilmember McDuffie on November 21st, 2023. That was Bill 25-581. It was reintroduced on February 5th, 2024 as Bill 25-691. Oops. I think two different bills. Yes, I'm misspeaking here. So this bill is Bill 25-581 plus Bill 25-691. So Bill 25-581 was introduced on November 21st. A year ago, Bill 25-691 was introduced on February 5th of this year. That was introduced by Councilmember Allen and McDuffie and myself. The Committee of the Whole and the Committee on Business and Economic Development held a joint public hearing on March 6th of this year. The Committee on Business and Economic Development marked up the bill on July 3rd, and now we have the print and report before us for the Committee of the Whole. I move the print. Again, this is the print attached to the Committee of the Whole report with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. On the print, is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me thank you and your staff for working hard on this bill throughout the summer. Let me extend that as well to Councilor McDuffie and his staff on the previous work with the committee and again this summer. I will obviously say it continues to be a grave injustice to the district that Congress continues to prohibit us from establishing a regulated recreational cannabis market. While our current system is probably one that we wouldn't have initially designed, we've had to be creative to ensure that the district residents have a safe and trusted medical cannabis marketplace. One important piece of that system is enforcement. I can provide a long history of how we got to where we are today, but suffice to say that today there are too many unlicensed illegal establishments that are flagrantly violating our laws and unwilling to come into compliance, and it's had a negative impact on our neighborhoods throughout the district. This council has worked hard to create pathways for unlicensed businesses to come into compliance and to find their way. This council has led the way in creating equity emphasis in making sure that the license process is able to be fair and keeps equity front of mind. But residents are frustrated with the lack of enforcement on illegal and unlicensed businesses after all that time now. I introduced emergency measures that the council passed earlier this year when, during the open application period for unlicensed establishments to come into that compliance with the medical cannabis program, several issues came to the forefront. First, it was unclear who had standing to protest the issuance of a license to an unlicensed establishment. Second, the enforcement scheme had some glaring deficiencies, such as agency coordination and unfunded provisions. Third, there were concerns about the ability of the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection to issue fines to commercial property owners in whose properties illegal cannabis establishments were operating. Bill 25691, the Medical Cannabis Program Enforcement Amendment Act of 2024, which would make that emergency measure I just talked about permanent, is included in this committee print. And I want to thank again the chairman, Councilor McDuffie, for incorporating it throughout this entire legislative process. I want to end by expressing a little bit of frustration and optimism about the way forward. Recently, it's been concerning the district has just basically been playing a game of whack-a-mole with these unlicensed illegal establishments. For every unlicensed establishment that gets a warning letter or a fine or a cease and desist order, it feels like there's a new establishment that opens up just down the block, and then APCA has to start the process all over again. It's got to stop. It's been a long process to make sure that APCA has the enforcement tools it needs to ensure compliance across the board. And I want to work to make sure that APCA is doing more, that their board has the tools they need to enforce our laws. I think this legislation is going to go a long way in helping the agency with enforcement responsibility, but we need to see the executive enforce the laws that are on the books. So with that, I look forward to supporting this measure today, Mr. Chairman. And again, appreciate the hard work that got us here.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further on the bill. Again, the vote is on the print to the committee of the whole print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I move the report with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. Is there discussion? On the report, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed?
And that would be the committee of the whole report.
Yes, sir.
And Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal
There is
impact?
no fiscal impact.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting.
Mr. Chairman, can you please not place it on the consent agenda?
Not have this on the consent agenda? Okay. The next measure for markup is Bill 25-654, Protecting Adjacent and Adjoining Property Owners from Construction Damage Amendment Act of 2024. Give me just a second here. This bill would amend the Construction Codes Approval and Amendments Act of 1986 to require permit holders to have insurance that covers damage to adjacent and adjoining properties for 3 additional permit types. So currently the law requires insurance that covers damage to adjacent and adjoining properties for a number of different types of permits. And this bill would add to it alteration and repair permits where the applicant is engaging in underpinning or related construction activities. It would add foundation permits, and it would add new building permits. The bill also amends the definition of adjacent property and strikes a provision in the code requiring the Department of Buildings to publish insurance quotes from 6 insurance companies. For the last couple of years, the Department of Buildings has been working on regulations to implement the law that was first passed in 2022 that I referenced a moment ago. As the Department of Buildings was drafting the regulations, they realized that there were gaps with respect to the permits covered by the law. As a result, this legislation was introduced. In addition, emergency legislation was approved by the council on April 2nd of 2024, and it forms the basis of the bill before us today. As introduced, Bill 25-654 only expands the list of permits covered under the law, and those are the permits I mentioned a minute ago. The committee print incorporates several additional changes that have been recommended by the Department of Buildings. First, the print strikes language in the definition of adjacent properties, requiring an adjacent property to be, quote, separated by an alley or public space from the real property for which the permit is applied, unquote. This ensures that homes that do not abut one another but are not separated by an alley or other public space are covered by the law. Second, the print strikes a provision in the law that requires the Department of Buildings to publish at least 6 insurance quotes from licensed providers for applicable construction permits. The Department of Buildings has been working closely with the building industry and the insurance industry in drafting regulations, as such requirements to publish quotes serves no purpose. This bill, Bill 25-654, was introduced at the request of the mayor on January 4th of this year. Committee of the Whole held a public hearing on this bill on July 11th of this year. I move the print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. Is there discussion? On the print with leave for staff, all those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the print is approved unanimously. I move the report with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. Is there discussion on the report? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed,
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal impact?
There is not.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for markup is Bill 25-737, which, depending upon where one is reading, has different titles, but it's being moved as the General Contractor Licensing Amendment Act of 2024. This bill would establish a board to oversee the licensure of construction managers and general contractors, define a scope of practice for construction managers and general contractors. It would establish eligibility criteria for construction manager and general contractor licenses. It would require construction managers and general contractors to demonstrate their financial responsibility or post a surety bond. And it would create a residential and commercial contractor guarantee and education fund to enable district residents to recover unpaid damages. I want to emphasize that that fund, based on the experience in other states, may not cover 100% of 100% of claims, but it certainly would be a significant improvement over the current situation. In fact, currently there is no occupational license requirement for general contractors in the district or for construction managers. As a result of this deficiency in our laws, consumers in the district often deal with unscrupulous contractors who do not have sufficient experience, misrepresent themselves or their capabilities, or are not financially responsible. Bill 25-737 aims to rectify the current situation by establishing a board to oversee the licensure of construction managers and general contractors, defining a scope of practice for construction managers and general contractors, establishing eligibility criteria for construction manager and general contractor licenses, requiring construction managers and general contractors to demonstrate their financial responsibility or post a surety bond, and creating a residential and commercial contractor guarantee and education fund to enable district residents to recover unpaid damages. Currently, the district lacks robust licensure requirements for construction managers or general contractors. In fact, it pretty much lacks any requirements for licenses other than a basic business license. This enables general contractors with a record of poor workmanship, negligence, fraud, or deceit to operate in the district with minimal consequences. Additionally, our laws do not provide consumers with any mechanisms to recover damages for poor workmanship or negligence. The bill before us rectifies these dynamics by establishing a board to oversee the licensure. And I'm not going to repeat everything I've already said. The importance of these changes cannot be understated, as there are countless examples of consumers all across the district who would benefit from the changes made by Bill 25-737. This bill was introduced on March 1st of this year by myself and Councilmembers Pinto and Janice Lewis George. The Committee of the Whole held a public hearing on this bill on July 11th of this year. I move the print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. Is there discussion? On the print with leave for staff, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I move the report with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion? By voice vote, all those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Sorry, I'm dealing with another issue. Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Does it have a fiscal impact?
This bill does have a fiscal impact of 1.2 million in FY '25 and 3.87 million over the financial plan, mostly FTEs.
Okay. Thank you. This measure, without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for markup is Bill 25-825, removal of the highway plan and building restriction line from Lot 9 in Square 5914 along the west side of Congress Street, southeast. SO 22-01642, Act of 2024. This bill was introduced at the request of the mayor. Bill 25-825 would remove an existing 15-foot building restriction line along the west side of Congress Street Southeast and amend the permanent system of highways of the District of Columbia to reduce the width of Congress Street Southeast by the same 15-foot distance. The removal of the building restriction line and the amendment to the highway plan will facilitate the development of a residential development with 180 units and ground floor commercial and retail space. The report goes into more detail about the development possibilities or proposal. The committee, assuming that this is adopted, the committee finds that the portion of Congress Street as depicted on the surveyor's plat is unnecessary for highway purposes. The removal of this street segment from the highway plan will facilitate the development of a residential property with 180 units and ground floor retail and commercial space. Additionally, the committee finds that the removal of the existing building restriction line along the west side of Congress Street is in the public interest. Accordingly, the committee recommends approval of the committee print. This bill was introduced at the request of the mayor on May 20th of this year, and the Committee of the Whole held a public hearing on this measure on July 11th, 2024. The committee received no testimony or comments in opposition to the bill. I move the print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. Is there discussion? All those in favor of the print say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I move the report with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion? By voice vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, group, that was getting a little anemic. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measures fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for markup is Bill 25-576, Protecting Historic Homes Amendment Act of 2024. This bill would amend two different laws. First, it adds a specified range of civil fines, penalties, or fees that can be assessed for violations of building code provisions applicable to the preservation of historic homes. Second, it amends the Migratory Local Wildlife Protection Act of 2022 to make the requirements of the law applicable to buildings constructed or altered pursuant to a building permit application submitted on or after January 1st, 2025. This will give developers more certainty as to when the law applies to permits, and it gives the Department of Buildings additional time to implement necessary system changes for the Migratory Local Wildlife Protection Act of 2022. With regard to the historic homes aspect of this, the bill amends the Historic Landmark and Historic District Protection Act of 1978 to provide that civil fines, penalties, or fees assessed on properties subject to historic preservation be variable by degree of severity, but not more than $10,000 per violation in most cases. The committee intends that in setting a fine with a variable severity, the fine should be set considering the extent of any unapproved work done on the property and the potential for the property to be restored to its pre-violation experience. I want to note that the Office of Planning believes that the fines could be applicable each day. That is, each day would be a separate violation. Correct. So while the cap would be $10,000 per violation, it could be in a matter of days more than that. For instances where there's willful unapproved work, the committee print creates a new civil penalty, also variable by degree of severity, beginning at $10,000 with a cap of $25,000 per violation. As introduced, the maximum amount of this penalty in the bill as introduced was $100,000. And the standard triggering the penalty was, quote, substantial, unquote, alterations. The Office of Planning recommended the lower maximum fine, given the imposition of multiple large penalties could have, given that imposition of multiple large penalties could have the unintended consequence of increasing opposition to the historic preservation program itself. The committee agrees with OP's recommended middle ground, that's assuming that this is adopted. The OP's recommended middle ground, and notes that this would not preclude OP from charging uncured violations as separate infractions, which is sort of what I said about each day. And that'll be clarified in the report. This bill was introduced by Councilmember Allen on November 15th, 2023. A public hearing was held on March 27th, 2024. I'm going to move the print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate you and your team moving this forward today. I know we had a fuller discussion this morning, so I don't need to reiterate everything there. I would note, I'm not sure I would agree that the current level represented in this committee print represents a middle ground. I think it's on the low end, and I know you said you'd be willing to work with me between first and second reading to see if we can't adjust that a little bit. I think that while I appreciate the comment that the Office of Planning could assess a fine every day for things that are ongoing, just not what we actually see them do in practice. And again, when we're talking about willful demolition, substantial violations of historic homes, those are folks that aren't they're not being a part of the historic preservation in the first place. So I'm not sure how a fine is going to be impacting that differently. But anyway, I appreciate your openness to work between first and second reading to see if we can find what that middle ground looks like. And I encourage my colleagues' support today and look forward to working with you in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. Further discussion on the bill? Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks to Councilmember Allen, but one of the things I hope you will consider as you look at this measure further is what would be the impact, or maybe you already have results from a study that would inform us the impact of heavy fines on these properties as it relates to, are we creating the atmosphere for an increase in vacancies throughout the city, or the sale of properties to investors because individuals cannot keep up with the fine? So I'm asking that question. Do you have data that would inform us on those two issues?
I'm sorry. I was focusing on the next bill I'm presenting. What, the data on what two issues?
On whether or not the fines would generate a vacancy of properties, residential properties, and whether or not the fines would also cause individuals to sell their properties to investors, and therefore we could end up with vacancies and potentially new structures at some point.
I don't have data on that. Some of that is speculative, but I suspect that the greater impact will be to discourage violations. As Councilmember Allen noted at the breakfast, what has been seen frequently in some historic districts is that a property owner balances the fine, which right now is about $4,000, against the value of the home and the value of the improvements, which could be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, the value of the home being more than that, and says, well, that's just a price of doing business. And sometimes there have been controversies that have been, I want to say, thoroughly extensive with regard to altering the structure. What do I mean by that? Essentially demolishing an existing contributing structure in a historic district.
Yeah.
And that just can't be replaced. We're not talking about simple alterations like adding a kitchen in the back or building out a porch. I'm talking about knocking down walls and building something that's completely different. And doing so in complete violation of the historic preservation law and inconsistent with the character of the historic district. So increasing the fines, and this was the testimony at the hearing, increasing the fines will have more of a deterrent effect.
All right, and I hear you. I understand that this piece of legislation is designed to preserve property, and I'm thinking about the preservation of communities where people live. So it's just apples and oranges that we're talking about this afternoon, but I just was curious as to whether or not any data has been collected that would inform us on that issue. But thank you, Chairman.
Yes, I just think I want to say a little bit more. I think it's unlikely that a property owner who has a expensive property in a historic district is going to walk away from the property. When
I
they are,
know many who have.
when they are investing this kind of money.
Mhm.
So the issue here is that they get their permits and that they design in accordance with the historic district. And I don't think it's likely. What could happen would be, well, and I also think that and I'm going to be proposing legislation this fall with regard to vacant properties to strengthen the law, but as an alternative, it'll be arguably more expensive to have the property vacant. Not only because you're paying taxes, but the tax rate will be higher. So I think vacancy is not a likely outcome.
Yes, perhaps, but my concern is about this disruption to the community, and that I've certainly seen in a couple of neighborhoods near where I live.
Disruption where the community goes berserk because somebody's like demolishing a house that's been historic.
No, they go berserk because people cannot keep up with the high cost of affording that house And so they, one little vibration to their property, they're ready to move and sell it at Bonanza and move to another neighborhood, out of my neighborhood into, you know.
Well, first of all, people shouldn't be moving out of your neighborhood because you're in a fine neighborhood, Councilmember Bonds. But at any rate, the point of this legislation
Yeah.
is to make it more expensive to violate the law.
Yeah, and I really was wondering if you actually had collected any information that would inform us on this. So thank you very much, and I look forward to what you are likely to do with vacant properties and would love to work with you on that. Have a keen interest in it.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Trayon White?
Yes, Chairman. I guess my observation has been in my community, and particularly the Anacostia community, it's been our historic district. There are a lot of, that's probably one of the communities with the most vacant properties. I guess people are afraid because so many regulations around the historic district of actually buying and investing into those properties, leading to people just staying away from it altogether. And I don't know what adverse impact this may have. No, we're trying to make sure we keep the same look or infrastructure of the historic district, but I just don't know what adverse impact this may have because we have a lot of properties in the Anacostia Historic District that's vacant because people just staying away from it because it's becoming too expensive to buy those homes and fix them up with all the different regulations surrounding them. So I just want to add that to the conversation as well.
Sure, but I have some familiarity with those properties that you're talking about because a lot of them are owned by the city. And those would be properties that are currently vacant. But what this bill addresses violating the permit requirements. And the issue again with vacant properties is that they're vacant, not that there are permits for them. So just want to emphasize this is about violating permits.
I agree, but I was just speaking to the fact of people buying and purchasing and fixing those up, because some of those are so old, they need to be completely remodeled just to be livable. But I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying it's vacant for a reason. People are looking for homes.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further on the print. The vote on the print, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. On the report, I move the report with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion? The vote will be on the report. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal impact?
No.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for markup is Bill 25-613 entitled Canes Way Designation Act of 2024. This bill would symbolically designate the portion of the public alley system within Square 1071, which connects to East Capitol Street and 8th Street Southeast as Canes Way. The location is in Ward 7. A symbolic naming is for ceremonial purposes and is in addition to and subordinate to any name that is an official name. And the name relates to the Kane family. The Kane family moved to 8th Street Southeast in 1957, one of the first African-American families on the street. Like many African-American families who moved onto the street at the time, they rented their home from Mr. Raphael Ursilio, who was a civil rights lawyer, businessman, and champion for housing equality for African-American families in the district. Mr. Ursilio, in his capacity as a real estate broker, regularly purchased homes that had racially restrictive covenants, and the land records and then sold them to African Americans despite the covenant. Upon his retirement, Mr. Ursilio urged the Kane family to follow suit and purchase the home they rented, which they did. While living on A Street, members of the Kane family learned to play basketball, football, swing, and climb in the alley on the other side of the street, the alley proposed for the symbolic designation in this bill. At the back of their home, there was a men's social club which provided sports and playground equipment to the families from the block so the children could have a place to play during their summers. The Kane family home is still frequently visited by friends, families, and those who wish to stop by and remember the neighborhood and the families who used to live on the block. The proposed designation is is in honor of the family members past and present. This bill was introduced by Councilmember Gray on December 1st, 2023. The committee held a public hearing on July 12th, 2024, and the committee received no testimony or comments in opposition to the bill. Without objection, I'll move both the print and report with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. Is there a discussion? The vote will be on both the print and report with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. I'm not going to move Bill 25-743 today. The next bill for markup is Bill 25-828, Alma Thomas Way Designation Act of 2024. This bill would symbolically designate 15th Street between Church Street and 2 Street Northwest as Alma Thomas Way. The location is in Ward 2. It's a symbolic naming, which is for ceremonial purposes and is in addition to and subordinate to any name that is an official name. Alma Thomas was born in Columbus, Georgia. In 1891, she moved to the district with her family in 1906 after the Atlanta riot in search of safety and educational opportunities that were denied to Black people in Georgia. The family lived in a townhome near 15th and Church Streets, less than a block from St. Luke's Episcopal Church, which the family attended. Alma Thomas and her sisters attended Armstrong Manual Training School, which is where Friendship Public Charter School is now located. Ms. Thomas went on to attend Howard University, where she obtained her Bachelor of Science degree in Fine Arts for Sculpture in 1924. Ms. Thomas went on to teach at Shaw Junior High. Let me see, Shaw Junior High School, which was segregated, under-resourced, overly crowded, and poorly maintained. However, she persisted in increasing her students' cultural horizons by taking them to museums throughout the district and challenging them to produce their own art in a variety of mediums. I'm trying to skip through some of the reports. She served as vice president of the Barnett Aiden Gallery and served on the board for many years. She continued to immerse herself in art education, taking night classes over a decade at American University. Alma Thomas retired from teaching in 1960 and became a full-time painter. She worked out of her home studio on 15th Street until an arthritis flare-up. Her work was featured in exhibits and galleries and at universities across the district. At age 81, she became the first African-American woman to put on a solo exhibition at the Whitney Museum of American Art and was featured at the Corcoran Gallery of Art in a solo exhibit that was attended by former Mayor Walter Washington, who proclaimed September 8th, 1972 as Alma Thomas Day. Her works have been shown in top museums around the United States. She passed away in 1978. After which her home on 15th Street was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Designating this portion of 15th Street where Alma Thomas lived and produced art throughout her life as Alma Thomas Way will serve to uplift her legacy in the community. This bill was introduced by Councilmember Henderson Council members Henderson and Pinto on May 24th of this year. Committee of the Whole held a public hearing on July 12th of this year, and the committees received no testimony or comments in opposition to the bill. Without objection, I'll move both the print and report with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for moving this measure. I'm a huge fan of Alma Thomas, and I sincerely believe that anyone who encounters her art and life story cannot help but be an admirer. She's legendary. Born in Columbus, Georgia, which is actually where I went to high school. She was raised and educated in the district. She's the first person to graduate from Howard University's Fine Arts program. And she was a public school art teacher at the former Shaw Junior High School for nearly 3 decades, all while as a practicing artist perfecting her craft. She obtained additional higher education degrees in fine arts and showed her work in community galleries. And in retirement, developed her painting style, moving more towards pointillism, but creating her own unique style of dabbing many vibrant colors of paint and geometric patterns that represent nature, emotions, and scenes for which she has become well known and highly admired. So I always love it. She had a second act in retirement. Her work has been shown at the Corcoran Museum, the Whitney Museum, and other museums in Boston, Baltimore, and New York. Ms. Thomas spent her girlhood and most of her adult life at a row house at 1530 15th Street Northwest in Logan Circle. When I learned that the block where she lived for most of her life did not have a street designation, I felt like we had to introduce this bill. Ms. Thomas uplifted her every community she belonged to, with whether it were her students, her fellow artists, her neighbors, and the street designation will certainly uplift her legacy as an artist and innovator and an active and caring resident here in the District of Columbia. So thank you so much for moving this bill, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion? We have both the print and report before us with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't hear any no votes. The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed,
Madam Budget Director, is Budget Counsel, Deputy Director? Council, does the measure of fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
There's no fiscal impact, correct?
There is no fiscal
And I
impact.
forgot to ask that, I think with the last bill, no fiscal impact,
You don't have to ask it for any of the street namings on today's agenda.
because none of them have a fiscal impact.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for markup in the committee of the whole is Bill 25-829, Zelda Fitch-Handler Way Designation Act of 2024. This bill would symbolically designate 6th Street Southwest between M Street and the northern boundary of Square 472, Lot 129, as Zelda Fitch-Handler Way. The location is in Ward 6, and this segment of 6th Street is essentially the portion that is adjacent to the Arena Stage Theater. This is symbolic naming for ceremonial purposes and is in addition to and subordinate to any name that is an official name. Zelda Diamond was born in Boston in 1924, moved to the district at age 4. Her father was a government scientist who developed the proximity fuse ordinance during World War II. And her mother was a housewife who immigrated from Lithuania. Wouldn't that be immigrated? She attended Woodrow Wilson High School as a child. That's now Jackson Reed, and she attended drama school. She went on to attend Cornell University, and after graduation, she came back to the district and married Thomas Fitch-Handler. In 1950, the Fitch-Handlers, along with Edward Magnum, who was a professor of theater at the George Washington University, co-founded the Arena Stage Theater, one of the first not-for-profit theaters, inspired by Margot Jones, the founder of Theater 47 in Dallas, which was the first professional theater company outside of New York. Arena Stage was the first racially integrated theater in the district and first regional theater in the country to transfer a production to Broadway, and the first to receive the Tony Award for regional theater. In 1961, Arena Stage moved to a custom theater in the round space, a custom theater in the round space where it still calls home. In 1973, the Arena became the first regional theater to be chosen by the U.S. Department of State to perform in the Soviet Union. Ms. Fitchandler implemented policies and programs promoting diversity in all aspects of theater, from the audience to production itself. When she stepped down from Arena Stage in 1990, she had produced more than 400 shows and directed more than 50 during her tenure. Designating signage on 6th Street, on this segment of 6th Street, will serve as a reminder of Zelda Fitchandler's impact on the local and national theater scene, and will serve as an important commemoration of what would have been her 100th birthday on September 18th, 2024. This legislation was introduced by Councilmember Allen on May 28th of this year, and the Committee of the Whole held a public hearing on July 12th of this year, and the committee received no testimony or comments in opposition to this legislation. Without objection, I move both the print and report with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilmember Allen.
very briefly, I think you noted, I believe it would be Zelda's 100th birthday tomorrow. So very glad that we're able to take this action today. And just appreciate you moving this piece of legislation forward. I'm not going to repeat all the items you've already shared about Zelda Fitchandler and the remarkable contribution she and Arena Stage have given to the district. I think the committee report does a great job of sharing that background. I just want to quickly give my thanks to Allison Irvin over at Arena Stage, who came to us with this idea, as well as ANC 6D for their advocacy for this naming. So I appreciate the work of our Southwest neighbors and leaders in this effort, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion? The vote will be on both the print and report with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't hear any opposed. The ayes have it unanimous. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed,
Madam Budget Director, Budget Counsel, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements? I forgot you already said it does.
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. I am not going to move today Bill 25-830 or 25-841. And if there's no objection, I'm going to move the 6 resolutions in block. PR 25-481, Citizen Review Panel, Shanna Bartley reappointment and redesignation resolution of 2024. PR 25-483, Citizen Review Panel, Elizabeth Moeller reappointment resolution of 2024. PR 25-729, Citizen Review Panel, Whitney Miller appointment resolution of 2024. PR 25-738, Citizen Review Panel, Andrew Miller appointment resolution of 2024. PR 25-739, Citizen Review Panel, Dr. Tyra Moore appointment resolution of 2024. And PR 25-745, Citizen Review Panel, Carolyn Woods appointment resolution of 2024. In 2004, in 2004, the council approved the Child in Need of Protection Amendment Act. The purpose of this 2004 act was to reform the district's child protection law. More importantly, the goal of the council was to create a seamless and effective system for responding to any type of child mistreatment, whether child abandonment, abuse, or neglect. An outcome of the 2004 act was to codify the establishment of the Citizen Review Panel. The panel serves as an independent oversight body for the district's child welfare system to evaluate the district government agencies involved in child protection, as well as services provided by vendors. The panel consists of 15 members, all of whom must be district residents. The mayor is required to appoint 8 members to the panel and must designate the chairperson. The council shall appoint 7 members to the panel and is required to designate the vice chairperson. Further, the panel is required to be broadly representative of the community and must include members who have who have expertise in the prevention and treatment of child abuse and neglect. In addition, the appointees to the panel should have a diversity of professional backgrounds and must be familiar with the child welfare system. The purpose of PR 25-481 is to reappoint Shanna Bartley as a member of the Citizen Review Panel and to redesignate her, that is to designate her again to be the vice chair of the Citizen Review Panel for a 3-year term to end on April 11th, 2027. Ms. Bartley is a Ward 6 resident. Currently, she serves as the acting executive director of DC Action for Children. This bill was introduced on October 17th, 2023. And for all of these resolutions, a public roundtable was held on July 11th, 2024. And there was no testimony for any of these in opposition, testimony or comments in opposition to the nominations. The purpose of PR 25-483 is to reappoint Elizabeth Corson Moeller as a member of the Citizen Review Panel for a 3-year term to end on April 11th, 2027. Ms. Moeller is a Ward 3 resident. Currently, she serves as the Director of Social Services at the Latin American Youth Center. And this resolution was introduced on October 17th, 2023. The purpose of PR 25-729 is to appoint Mr. Whitney Miller as a member of the Citizen Review Panel for a term to end on April 11th, 2026. Mr. Miller is a Ward 5 resident. He's a member of the Society for Human Resource Management and has been certified as trainer with that organization. He currently serves as the Human Resources Director at AIDS United, where he oversees and manages all human resource operations. Mr. Miller is responsible for managing talent acquisition and conducting and analyzing employee engagement activities. This resolution was introduced on April 30th of 2024. The purpose of PR 25-738 is to appoint Mr. Andrew Miller as a member of the Citizen Review Panel for a term to end on April 11th, 2025. Mr. Miller is a Ward 8 resident. He currently serves as a out-of-school time program coordinator with the District of Columbia Public Schools, where he provides oversight and monitoring to all out-of-school time programs in 5 DCPS elementary schools. Prior to that, Mr. Miller was the program director for Best Kids, Inc., where he handled a caseload of 45 mentors engaged in the district's foster care system. This resolution was introduced on April 30th, 2024. The purpose of PR 25-739 is to appoint Dr. Tyra Moore as a member of the Citizen Review Panel for a term to end on April 11th, 2025. Dr. Moore is a Ward 6 resident. She's a licensed independent clinical social worker in the District of Columbia and a licensed certified social worker clinical in Maryland. Dr. Moore owns and operates her own practice, Moore Therapeutic and Consulting Services, where she provides individual therapy to adults with a focus on trauma, PTSD, grief and loss, anxiety, depression, and cultural trauma. This resolution was introduced on April 30th, 2024. And finally, of the 6, PR 25-745 would appoint Ms. Woods as a member of the Citizen Review Panel for a term to end on April 11th, 2026. Ms. Woods is a Ward 2 resident. From 2014 to 2022, Ms. Woods was a traditional licensed foster parent with the district's Child and Family Services Agency. In that role, she cared for children who were placed in her home. Prior to that, Ms. Woods served as a worker advisor with the Texas Health and Human Services Commission in Fort Worth, Texas. And this resolution also was introduced on April 30th, 2024. I want to note that these are appointments, not confirmations, appointments by the council. Without objection, I will move the prints and reports for all 6 of these with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion? The vote will be on the prints and reports with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? I don't hear any no votes. The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, are these measures legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, they are.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete for each?
Once the reports are filed.
Madam Budget Counsel, do the measures fiscal impact statements comply with council requirements?
Yes, they do.
And these are appointments, and so there's no fiscal impact.
Correct.
Without objection, these measures will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for markup in the Committee of the Whole is PR 25-888, Board of Directors of the Washington Metropolitan Transit Authority, Spring Worth Reappointment Resolution of 2024. The purpose of this resolution is to reappoint Ms. Spring Worth as an alternate member of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority Board of Directors to complete a term to end June 30th, 2028. Ms. Worth is a Ward 4 resident. Currently, she serves as Director of Transit Policy and Planning for the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Operations and Infrastructure. Prior to that, Ms. Worth served as the WMATA Budget and Policy Manager for DDOT. Ms. Worth is a graduate of the district's Capital City Fellows Program and currently serves as Chair of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments Public Transportation Committee. The WMATA Board is comprised of 8 principal directors, those are the voting members, and 8 alternate directors. And Ms. Worth would continue as an alternate director from the District of Columbia. For all the reasons stated in the committee report, as well as whatever I've just said, the committee, assuming this is adopted, recommends council adoption of PR 25-888. This resolution was introduced on July 1st, 2024. And the Committee of the Whole held a public roundtable on July 11th, 2024. Before and during and after that roundtable, the committee received 0 testimony or comments in opposition to this nomination. Without objection, I will move both the print and report with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilmember Bonds.
maybe I missed this, but did you indicate the ward that Ms. Worth lives in?
Yes, she lives in Ward 4.
Ward 4. Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, the vote will be on both the print and report for PR 25-888. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? I don't hear any no votes. The ayes have it unanimously. And the resolution is approved. The Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report and hearing record are filed.
Madam Budget Director, does the measures fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
And again, this is a council appointment. Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. We will turn now to measures from other committees. And we will begin with the Committee on Business and Economic Development, chaired by Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie. Bill 25-229, Cost-Free Coverage for Prostate Cancer Screening Amendment Act of 2024. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Chairman. Bill 25-229 was introduced by Councilmember Charles Allen and a number of other colleagues on March 20th, 2023. The bill was referred to the Committee on Business and Economic Development on April 4th, 2023, and the committee held a public hearing on the measure on September 28th of 2023. At the hearing, many witnesses testified about the high incidence of prostate cancer in the district, particularly among Black men. This bill would provide cost-free coverage of 1 prostate-specific antigen test and digital rectal exam per year pursuant to evidence-based guidelines. It would also prohibit any health insurer from imposing a deductible, co-insurance, co-payment, or other cost-sharing requirement for prostate cancer screening. Many other states impose similar requirements for covering screening exams, and it's time for the district to do so as well. The committee worked with Councilmember Allen's office and with the Department of Health to clarify which guidelines was controlled, settling on screening guidelines of the National Comprehensive Cancer Network. With that, I move the bill and ask that it be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Does it have a fiscal impact?
Funds are sufficient.
Thank you. Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. Bill 25-240, United Negro College Fund Real Property Tax Abatement Extension Amendment Act of 2024. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Chairman. Bill 25-240 was introduced by Councilmember Brianna Doe on April 3rd, 2023. Referred to the Committee on Business and Economic Development on April 4th, 2023. The committee held a public hearing on the bill on January 24th of this year. Bill 25-240 provides an abatement of real property taxes on property owned by the United Negro College Fund. A prior 10-year tax abatement expired in 2022. At the hearing, numerous witnesses testified about the scholarships, educational support, and community engagement work that UNCF funds and provides to help disadvantaged students attend college. I want to acknowledge and thank my colleagues, including Councilmember Nadeau and Chairman Mendelson, who helped fund the abatement during the budget process earlier this year. With that, I move the bill and ask that it be placed on the non-consent agenda for today's legislative meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Does it have a fiscal impact?
Funds are sufficient because we funded the revenue loss from the abatement in the FY25 budget financial plan.
Thank you. This measure will be, without objection, this measure will be placed on the non-consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure for consideration is Bill 25-277, Landscape Architect Services Sales Tax Clarification Amendment Act of 2024. Mr. McDuffie.
Thank you, Chairman. Bill 25-277 was introduced by Councilmember Charles Allen with Council members Matt Fruman and Robert White on April 27, 2023. The bill was referred to the Committee on Business and Economic Development on May 2nd, 2023, and the committee held a public hearing on the measure on January 24th of this year. This bill exempts from sales tax landscape architecture services performed by a landscape architect licensed in the District of Columbia or provided by a design firm that employs a landscape architect licensed in the District of Columbia. This change is in line with how the district and other jurisdictions exempt other professional services from sales taxation and clarifies what was likely intended when the district created a license for landscape architecture back in 2016. The committee print includes the subject to appropriation provision, which will need to be addressed in a future budget before this tax change becomes effective. With that, I move the bill and ask that it be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
And is there a fiscal impact?
There is. It is 1.9 million in 25 and 7.7 million over the plan. And that would be a reduction in tax revenue.
Thank you. Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next several measures, which is more than three, are reported out of the Committee on Health chaired by Councilmember Christina Henderson. The first is Bill 25-565, Certified Nurse Aid Amendment Act of 2024. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I introduced the Certified Nurse Aid Amendment Act of 2024 along with my colleagues, Councilmembers Allen, Fruman, Louis George Nadeau, Parker Pinto, Trayon White on November 6, 2023. The original name for this bill was the Direct Care Worker Amendment Act of 2023. The purpose of the bill is to address the district's current direct care worker shortage. You might be asking, what is a direct care worker? These are home health aides, certified nurse assistants, nursing assistive personnel, who help seniors and persons with disabilities with various tasks and getting around. Between 2020 and 2024, certified home health aides decreased by 13%, and certified nurse assistants decreased by 28%. This is based on recent workforce data from the Department of Health. Advocates ascribe this shortage to low pay and high administrative burdens. There are approximately 36,000 residents in the district who need direct care. And with the aging population continuing to grow, the number will only increase. So it's critical that we address this issue now. The bill, which was unanimously approved by the Committee on Health on July 11th, addresses the direct care workforce crisis in the District of Columbia in significant ways. First, the bill eliminates barriers to licensure by combining the certified nurse aid and the home health aid license into a unified license. Currently, these two types of providers are, while it's essentially the same function in different settings, combining the licenses will streamline the process and no longer require professionals to maintain two different licensure types. Next, the bill creates an expedited temporary license for CNAs for Maryland and Virginia in good standing, which would allow for them to work in the District of Columbia within 5 days. This will increase our potential workforce while ensuring patient safety. The bill establishes an advisory committee to propose recommendations to the Board of Nursing to help develop credentials and standards of education for the new CNA license. And finally, the bill increases the wages for this profession to on average 120% of the living wage, up from 117.6% of the living wage. This is the only provision in the bill that is subject to appropriations. It will cost approximately $8.7 million in local funds in FY26 and $26.7 million over the course of the financial plan. I look forward to getting this bill passed and continue to support vital healthcare in the workforce. Support this vital healthcare workforce here in the district. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson. Are there questions from members? Councilmember Louis George.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just want to thank Councilmember Henderson for her leadership and support of home health aides and certified nursing aides. As chair of the committee that oversees the Department of Disability Services, I've heard from many home health aides about being overworked due to lack of adequate staffing and their difficulty providing for their families on such low salaries. I also heard from many people with disabilities who tell me about how much they enjoy and appreciate their home health aides and how lives of themselves and their families have changed due to the care home health aides provide them. Councilmember Henderson, do you think by taking this step to support home health aides and CNAs, we are recognizing the invaluable services they provide to some of the most vulnerable residents in the district?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for that Q&A. Further questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
And I heard Councilmember Henderson state the cost.
Yeah, do you want me to?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, there is a local component and a federal component to this because of the Medicaid reimbursement costs. So the district's portion is 8.7 million in 26 and 26.7 million over the plan. And the federal portion is 62 million over the plan for a total of 89 million. But again, the district's portion of that is 26.7.
So the cost of the bill is substantially higher than what the district will be paying.
Correct. Because the,
Which is to say that we would be increasing, I shouldn't put it this way, but we would be increasing the compensation for these workers largely on the US government's nickel.
70% of it would be paid for by the federal government.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. Without objection, the next two measures will be considered in block. PR 25-807, Board of Social Work Wanda Wheeler Confirmation Resolution 2024, and PR 25-808, Board of Social Work Celeria Moore Confirmation Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PR 25-807 nominates Wanda Wheeler for reappointment as an independent clinical social worker licensed in the district for a term to end March 3rd, 2027. Ms. Wheeler is a licensed independent clinical social worker with extensive experience running private psychotherapy practice in Washington, D.C. for nearly 15 years. She holds a master's of social work from New York University. Additionally, Ms. Wheeler has worked at the National Institutes of Health in a variety of capacities, managing programs and budgets and improving consumer customer satisfaction. Ms. Wheeler lives in Ward 4. PR 25-808 nominates Celeria Moore for reappointment as a consumer member of the Board of Social Work for a term to end March 3rd, 2026. Ms. Moore is an adjunct professor at Trinity Washington University and is a retired DC Public Schools early childhood educator and community advocate with over 40 years of professional and personal service. She holds a master's in child development from Texas Southern University, and she is also a Ward 4 resident. I move both of these nominations, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, they are.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, is the record complete for each?
Yes.
Madam Budget Director, did the measures fiscal impact statements comply with council requirements?
Yes, they do.
There's no fiscal impact because they're nominations.
Correct.
No objection to these measures will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure is PR 25-826, Board of Pharmacy Roderick McGill Confirmation Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PR 25-826 nominates Roderick McGill for appointment as a consumer member to the Board of Pharmacy with a term for ending March 12, 2027. Currently, Mr. McGill serves as the Assistant General Counsel with the Department of Defense Legal Services Agency, Defense Human Resources Activity. Additionally, he serves as a mediator with the District of Columbia Superior Court, multi-door dispute resolution, where he develops and implements conflict resolution strategies and drafts legally binding agreements for landlords and tenants. Mr. McGill earned his Juris Doctorate degree from the University of the District of Columbia, and he is a Ward 8 resident. I move this nomination.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The next measure is PR 25-831, Board of Dietetics and Nutrition, Emily Arkin, Confirmation Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PR 25-831 nominates Emily Erkin for appointment as a dietitian licensed in the district for a term to end March 12, 2025. Ms. Arkin is a registered dietitian nutritionist based in the district, and her group practice specializes in eating disorders and medical nutrition therapy for gastrointestinal disorders and other illnesses across life stages. Ms. Arkin earned her Master's of Science degree in Nutrition and Public Health at Columbia University, and she is a Ward 4 resident. I move this nomination.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. PR 25-837, Board of Medicine, Andrea Anderson, Confirmation Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PR 25-837 nominates Dr. Andrea Anderson for reappointment to the Board of Medicine for a term to end August 3rd, 2026. Dr. Anderson is a family physician and has served as the Assistant Medical Director of the ARPA Cardozo Health Center for 16 years, where she coordinates policy and curricula for over 80 family physicians, nurse practitioners, and physician assistants. She also serves as a medical director to Reach Out and Read of Metro DC, a nonprofit organization working directly with pediatric providers to promote early literacy among children. Dr. Anderson earned her Doctor of Medicine degree from Brown University, and she is a Ward 5 resident. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Other questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. If there's no objection, the next two measures will be considered together. PR 25-840, Board of Dentistry, Dr. Eric Bradshaw, Confirmation Resolution of 2024, and PR 25-841, Board of Dentistry, Dr. Janelle Animalechi, Confirmation Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PR 25-840 nominates Dr. Eric Bradshaw to the Board of Dentistry for an appointment as a dentist licensed in the District of Columbia with a term to end November 30th, 2026. Dr. Bradshaw is a general dentist with advanced training in implant dentistry, cosmetic dentistry, and Invisalign. Dr. Bradshaw operates his private dental practice, Mint Dental, in the district. He earned his doctorate in dental surgery from Howard University, and he is a Ward 4 resident. PR 25-841 nominates Dr. Janelle Animalechi to the Board of Dentistry for an appointment as a dentist licensed in the district with a term to end November 30th, 2027. Dr. Animalechi is the board certified pediatric dentist and the CEO of Children's Choice Pediatric Dentistry and Orthodontics. She earned her doctorate of dental surgery from the University of North Carolina. She is a Ward 5 resident. Mr. Chairman, as this is the end of my piece here on all of these nominations, I want to thank all of these health professionals who are volunteering of their time. We still have 19 boards and commissions on the health side of things. And these are, I've read these individuals' resumes, they're full-time working, practicing in their various professions, and then they give of their time to review applications and make licensing decisions on behalf of their particular professions. And so we thank them greatly. This is also my opportunity to give a PSA for anyone who is a health professional licensed in the district who is interested in serving. Please go to the Mayor's Office of Talent and Appointment website, as there are some vacancies that need to be filled. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Other questions from members? Madam General Counsel, are these two measures legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, they are.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete for each?
Yes.
Madam Budget Director, do the measures fiscal impact statements comply with council requirements?
Yes, they do.
Without objection, these measures will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. The rest of the measures on this committee, the whole agenda have come out of the Committee on Transportation and the Environment, chaired by Councilmember Allen. The first is Bill 25-738, Transportation Improvements Amendment Act 2024. Councilmember Allen.
I could just move them all in block if you want me to.
You could try, but I will rule it out of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill 25-738, the Transportation Improvements Amendment Act of 2024 was introduced on March 1st, 2024 by you at the request of the mayor. It was referred to the committee on March 5th, 2024, and the committee held a public hearing on the bill on June 6th, 2024. The committee unanimously approved the bill at an additional meeting on July 12th, 2024. The bill modifies the District Department of Transportation's Establishment Act in several ways. First, the bill repeals language in the DC Code delegating certain DDOT functions to a specific subdivision within the agency. This will in turn allow DDOT's director to assign certain statutory responsibilities to whichever internal administration is best suited to perform that determined function. The bill also grants DDOT the ability to manage transportation improvement plans on lands transferred from the federal government for recreational use. Under its current legal authority, DDOT is limited to accepting federal land parcels that have been designated for a transportation purpose. Finally, the print declares the district has an adequate interest in the reconstruction or maintenance of roads and bridges on National Park Service's parkland to fulfill requirements of Title 23 of the U.S. Code or other applicable federal laws. By codifying the district's legal interest in this parkland, the print will allow several capital projects involving roads and bridges on federal land, including the 11th Street Bridge Park, to receive the permits they need to be able to move forward. Together, the provisions in this bill will empower DDOT to more competently perform the statutory duties that the council has delegated to the agency and will allow the construction of new innovative capital projects involving federal land. With that, Mr. Chairman, I ask the measure be placed on the consent agenda for the additional legislative meeting to follow.
Thank you. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a cost?
Funds are sufficient.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. Bill 25-424, DC Water Critical Infrastructure Freedom of Information Clarification Amendment Act of 2024. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill 25-424, the DC Water Critical Infrastructure Freedom of Information Clarification Amendment Act of 2024, was introduced by me on July 11th, 2023. The bill was referred to the committee on September 19th, 2023, and the committee held a public hearing on the bill on March 4th, 2024. The committee unanimously approved the bill at an additional meeting on July 12th, 2024. The bill amends the district's Freedom of Information Act of 1976, or FOIA, to exempt from disclosure critical infrastructure information or plans for the District of Columbia Water and Sewer Authority, also known as DC Water. The district's FOIA already grants companies regulated by the Public Service Commission, including Washington Gas and Pepco, an exemption that shields them from disclosing any of their critical infrastructure information or plans that contain critical infrastructure information in response to a FOIA request. The rationale behind this exemption is that since these utilities provide DC residents with essential services like electricity, natural gas, drinking water, they must be able to withhold the disclosure of information that could be used to attack, threaten, or otherwise disrupt the infrastructure needed to provide those services. However, since DC Water is not regulated by the Public Service Commission, it does not qualify for this exemption, despite the fact it is also a utility that provides essential services, drinking water, to district residents in the form of safe drinking water and wastewater treatment. This bill closes this gap by FOIA and by adding DC Water to the list of entities shielded from the public disclosure of critical infrastructure information. These changes have been in effect on an emergency and temporary basis, and the bill before us today would make these changes permanent. With that, Mr. Chairman, I ask these measures be placed on the consent agenda for the additional legislative meeting to follow.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal impact?
No fiscal impact.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. If there's no objection, the next three measures will be considered together or in block. PR 25-766, District of Columbia Water and Sewer Authority Board of Directors, Howard Gibbs, Confirmation Resolution of 2024. PR 25-767, District of Columbia Water and Sewer Authority Board of Directors, Richard Jackson, Confirmation Resolution of 2024. And PR 25-768, District of Columbia Water and Sewer Authority Board of Directors, Anthony Giancola, Confirmation Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For quick background, DC Water is governed by a board of directors consisting of 11 principal members and 11 alternate members. 6 board members must be district residents appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of the council. Of those 6, 1 must be the director of the district Department of Environment or a cabinet level officer, but no more than 4 may be district employees or officials. PR 25-766, PR 25-767, and PR 25-768 were introduced by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor on May 3rd, 2024, and were referred to this committee on May 7th, 2024. The committee held a roundtable on the measures on June 27th, 2024, and then unanimously approved at an additional meeting of the committee on July 12th. PR 25-766 And PR 25-768 would reappoint Howard Gibbs and Anthony Giancola to the District of Columbia Water and Sewer Authority Board as district resident members for terms to end September 12th, 2028. Mr. Gibbs is a Ward 6 resident with over 40 years of academic and practical engineering experience, as well as government service on multiple professional licensing boards. Mr. Giancola is a Ward 4 resident who served in the U.S. Navy for 20 years and has worked in a variety of engineering roles for local governments in both Maryland and the district, as well as for WMATA. PR 25-767 would reappoint Richard Jackson to the District of Columbia Water and Sewer Authority Board as a cabinet-level officer member for a term to end September 12th, 2028. Mr. Jackson is a Ward 7 resident and the Director of the Department of Energy and Environment who has worked in government for over 2 decades and is a veteran of the Nuclear Submarine Force operating reactors. All 3 nominees have already served on the board, and the reports filed with the Secretary provide a much more detailed summary of their background and experience. With that, Mr. Chairman, I ask these measures be placed on the consent agenda for the additional legislative meeting to follow.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, are these 3 measures legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, they are.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete for each?
Yes.
Madam Budget Director, do the measures, fiscal impact statements comply with council requirements?
Yes, they do.
Without objection, these measures will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. There's no objection. The next 3 measures will be considered together in block. PR 25-823, Green Finance Authority Board, Deborah Loomis, Confirmation Resolution of 2024. PR 25-824, Green Finance Authority Board, Ricardo Nuguria, Confirmation Resolution of 2024. PR 25-825, Green Finance Authority Board, Todd Monash, Confirmation Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The DC Green Finance Authority, or Green Bank, is governed by the Green Finance Authority Board, composed of 11 members, 4 non-voting members and 7 voting members. The non-voting members are government officials, including the Director of the Department of Energy and Environment, the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, the Executive Director of the Office of Public-Private Partnerships, and the Chief Financial Officer or their designees. The voting members are appointed by the mayor, but must include 2 members with experience at a financial institution operating within the district, 3 members with financial, project development, or legal expertise in clean energy, clean infrastructure, clean transportation, stormwater management, or green infrastructure, and 2 members with experience in affordable housing or community development. The 7 voting members are subject to council approval. PR 25-823, PR 25-824, and PR 25-825 were introduced by the chairman at the request of the mayor on May 22nd, 2024, and referred to this committee on June 11th, 2024. The committee held a roundtable on the measures on June 27th. PR 25-823 would reappoint Deborah Loomis to the Green Finance Authority Board as a voting member with financial, project management, or legal expertise in clean energy, clean infrastructure, clean transportation, stormwater management, or green infrastructure for a term to end July 9th, 2027. Ms. Loomis is a Ward 7 resident who has previously served as a sustainability ambassador for the Department of Energy and Environment and as a senior advisor for climate change to the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps. PR 25-824 and PR 25-825 would reappoint Ricardo Nogueira and Todd Monash, respectively, to the Green Finance Authority Board as voting members with experience at a financial institution operating within the district for terms to end July 9th, 2027. Mr. Nogueira is a Ward 1 resident who has extensive local and international experience in climate finance, and Mr. Monash is a Ward 3 resident with substantial experience in commercial banking. All 3 nominees have already served on the board, and the reports provide a more detailed summary of their background and experience. With that, Mr. Chairman, I ask these measures be placed on the consent agenda for the additional legislative meeting to follow.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, are these measures legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, they are.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete for each?
Yes.
Madam Budget Director, do the measures, fiscal impact statements comply with council requirements?
Yes, they do.
Without objection, these measures will be placed on the consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. I hate to say it because we're having a good time, but that's going to end the business for the committee of the whole. We will adjourn and then start up the legislative meeting. How soon will we be ready? All right, we will begin the legislative meeting, and I'm not moving, and I don't think anybody has any business for me, so we'll start the legislative meeting at 3:06. The time is 3:01 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned. I weighing in what?
On the policies.
Like who?
Like the ones we just indirectly approved. I mean, these are.
You talking about some of the health committee appointments or child appointments?
I don't know, what is this? Okay.
I don't know that it bothers me. I don't know that it bothers me. Yes?
Well, I don't know, I mean, it should bother us that the feds are weighing in very heavily on how we do things.
Well, they're. The short answer is yes. It's a little messy back there. Yeah, that looks on the doors.
Yep.
Oh, to sign?
Yeah. The chat about the guy who's like play by play. It's now removed from the chain.
It's now what?
And removed from the chain. I don't see him being anything but weird.
I agree.
Freaking out.
I agree. Can you come here first? Calling to order this meeting. This is an additional meeting of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the Council. Today is Tuesday, September 17th, 2024. The time is 3:14 in the afternoon. We are meeting in room 500, the council chambers of the Johnny Wilson Building. Most of us are in person. At least one council member is participating online. This meeting is being broadcast on Council Channel Cable Television 13, as well as on the council's website, www.dccouncil.gov. This is an additional meeting, not a regularly scheduled meeting. Our next regularly scheduled meeting will be October 1st. We always begin it's also the 29th legislative meeting of Council Period 25. I was once told I had to make that observation at the beginning of meetings. We always begin our legislative meetings with a moment of silence, and then I'll ask the secretary to call the roll. If we could have a moment of silence, please. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Allen,
Here.
Councilmember Bonds. Councilmember Bonds, Councilmember Freeman,
Present.
Councilmember Gray, Councilmember Gray, Councilmember Henderson. Here. Councilmember Lewis George.
Here.
Councilmember McDuffie.
Here.
Chairman Mendelson,
Present.
Councilmember Nadeau,
Here.
Councilmember Parker,
Here.
Councilmember Pinto,
Present.
Councilmember Robert White,
Present.
Councilmember Trahan White.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We have on the agenda the Secretary's report of committee filings, but we dispense with that at the Committee of the Whole. And we have on the agenda the Secretary's report of introductions and referrals, and we dispense with that as well at the Committee of the Whole. If there's no objection, I am going to move out of order an emergency bill that's on page 9 of the agenda. That would be under the category reading and vote of emergency legislation at the request of the mayor. The fiscal year 2025 local budget emergency act of 2024 and the accompanying declaration resolution. Hearing no objection, those measures are before us. I'm going to move the declaration. That's PR 25-961, or I move the declaration, PR 25-961. The purpose of the declaration is to place in order the emergency bill. The emergency bill, which is fiscal year 2025 local budget emergency act of 2024, is identical to the Budget Act, what we call the Local Budget Act, that was adopted by the council in June. We submitted that budget as quickly as could be to Congress for the required 30-day review. Congress, which is in the midst of an election year, has not been meeting. And so the 30 days is projected to expire somewhere around December 6th. That's 2 months after the start of the fiscal year. We need this budget in place before the start of the fiscal year. That is before October 1st. I do want to note previous versions of this legislation were returned by the mayor unsigned, which is certainly her prerogative. However, our general counsel has opined, and I believe the attorney general has opined, that the full 10 days count. The full 10 days count, even if the bill is returned unsigned. So it will be necessary for this legislation, which, if approved, will be transmitted today to the mayor. It will be necessary that she signs this legislation before October 1st, because otherwise it will not be deemed approved until October 2nd. So I've already moved the declaration. If members have questions, please ask. Otherwise, I will move to a vote. Is there discussion? Councilmember Nadeau?
Yes, Chairman, I am in support of this declaration. I did have one topic I wanted to raise that I think could be considered germane. The Tax Revision Commission. They were supposed to have delivered something to us by now. They met in July to reconsider draft recommendations. Well, they were supposed to meet in July and they unexpectedly canceled the meeting. And all of a sudden, there is a severe lack of transparency there on what it is they're doing. There's essentially complete inaction, and this is something we should have had for the FY25 budget. Now it's not even clear if we'll have it for FY26. And whatever is produced is going to be tarnished by significant process concerns. I bring it up here because this is the first time we are convened since we recessed, and we are considering something related to the budget today. Do you have any idea what our next steps are with the Tax Revision Commission? Is it something where we should be calling them to the council to come answer for themselves?
I'm not sure if it's germane to this legislation, but the discussion's in order. I have talked to several members of the commission who are concerned that the commission will not have a report or recommendations. I then discussed this with the chair of the commission, Tony Williams, and he assured me that there would be recommendations. As he put it, they may not include one of the recommendations that was in a previous iteration. As you know, there've been some drafts. The former mayor, who's the chair of the commission, said that he was quite clear that the commission would adopt a report. My message to him was to say, even if the commission doesn't adopt a report or recommendations, could they still give us a report? Because there's been a lot of staff work. But he all but said that's unnecessary because they will adopt some recommendations.
Did he have a sense of when? Like
Before September 30th.
this month?
Yes.
Thank you.
I can only report on my conversations. Did you want to say anything? Okay. That's the best answer I can give you is the conversations I've had. I would like to see, given all the staff work, I would like to see at a minimum a report, even if it doesn't have recommendations. But as I said, as I delivered that message to Mr. Williams, he was quite clear that he thought there would be something adopted by the commission.
Thank you.
We'll see. Further discussion on the declaration. We have the declaration before us. That's PR 25-961. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I'm going to move the underlying bill, Bill 25-949, so moved. And now I'm going to move an amendment nature of a substitute, which was circulated yesterday. So just so that everybody's clear, what the mayor submitted. So the Home Rule Act says that the budget can only be considered if it's submitted by the mayor. Or rather that in order for the council to act on a budget, on any appropriation, it has to be submitted by the mayor. There has to be a bill submitted by the mayor. That's what I'm trying to say. So the mayor submitted a bill last week. I believe it actually was filed on Monday. What was filed was the bill as introduced, the budget as introduced for fiscal year 2025 on April 4th. Well, that's very different than the bill that we adopted. Very different than the budget that we adopted. So this amendment nature of a substitute is necessary in order for us to adopt what we adopted in June. That's sort of stating the obvious. The ANS is what puts up before us what we previously adopted. So I move the amendment nature of a substitute. Is there discussion? On the amendment nature of a substitute, this is not the final vote on the bill. On the amendment nature of a substitute, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. So now we have the bill as amended before us. Is there further discussion? And again, this reflects what we, mirrors what we, is identical to what we adopted in June. Hearing no further discussion on the bill as amended, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That is like so anemic. Let's try again. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing no noes, the ayes have it unanimously, and the bill is approved. We will go now to the consent agenda. Are there changes to the consent agenda? And before anybody speaks, on page 2, the first 4 items are removed from the consent agenda. That would be Ronald Ron Austin, adjustment of building restriction line, closing of a public alley, and closing of a public alley. In addition, on page 2, item C3 is removed from consent. That was requested in the committee of the whole. On page 3, item 9 is removed from consent. It was not moved in the committee of the whole. And items 12 and 13 are removed. They were not considered in the committee of the whole. So that would be Bill 25-743, Bill 25-830, and Bill 25-841 are removed from the consent agenda and will not be considered today. On page 5, item E2, Citizen Review Panel Elizabeth Moeller reappointment resolution is removed from consent. And on page 6, item F1, Bill 25-868. This is final reading and vote on temporary legislation. It's the Family Rehousing Stabilization Program Protection Temporary Amendment Act. That's removed from consent. Are there any other changes to the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, can you just repeat again for the particular street naming? I just want to
I'm
make
sorry, can I
sure,
repeat what?
a street renaming, I just want to make sure that you had that on your list. Okay, thank you. Can you, excuse me, Councilmember McDuffie shook his head in the affirmative, so I'm good.
On page 3, items 9, 12, and 13 are removed. Hearing no other changes to the consent agenda? You want me to go over them again? I heard one person say no. That doesn't speak for everybody.
Seconded.
All right, we have the consent agenda as amended before us. All those in favor of the consent agenda say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. There's no objection. On page 2, items 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to move to postpone to the October 1st legislative meeting. That's Bill 25-196, Ron Austin Memorial Park designation. Bill 25-611, adjustment of building restriction line in square 2950. Bill 25-614, closing of a public alley in square 5051. And Bill 25-636, closing of a public alley in square 3701. I move to postpone those measures to the October 1st legislative meeting. There's no objection. My motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, they're postponed.
Mr. Chairman, would you entertain, or can you entertain a question at this time?
Well, they're postponed, but I'll take a question.
Yes, on item 3, could you give me the location of this Square.
Offhand, I can't.
Okay. And also for 4, same question.
Yeah, I don't have the reports in front of me,
Okay,
but we
so
can,
I'll pull it from the legislation. Okay, thank you.
yes. All right, the next measure is Bill 25-581. This is item 3 at the bottom of page 2. Medical Cannabis Clarification and Program Enforcement Amendment Act of 2024. So moved. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Who asked to be recognized? Councilmember Parker.
Along with council members Pinto and Bonds, I would like to move an amendment to B 25-0581. The amendment seeks to ensure that the changes to the medical cannabis rules sufficiently protect the district's small children who are particularly susceptible to unintentional consumption of cannabis products and who can suffer real health consequences as a result. The amendment advances the goal in 2 ways. First, the amendment adds specificity to the types of medical cannabis product packaging that would be banned because of the likelihood that they would be mistaken for food that children frequently consume. The amendment also ensures that when a medical cannabis cultivation center, retailer, or internet retailer seeks a license to operate within 400 feet of a daycare center, that center is provided standing before the ABC board. We had a bit of discussion this morning, but I would just reiterate that the focus here is about protecting the district's small children. These are common sense enhancements for the first in terms of the prohibition on certain packaging. 14 other states also have those restrictions around packaging. And there was a question earlier about whether or not current law already makes the adjustments that we're trying to make in this amendment. I would point out that while current law prohibits the use of cartoons or similar images, packaging that is appealing to children, and use of the words candy or candies, other jurisdictions, those 14 other states go further, including the banning of depictions of toys, animals, or children, as well as products that resemble commercially available food that appeals to children, like Oreos, like we discussed earlier. And that is, again, what this amendment seeks to do. Thank you.
As part of the 15 minutes, 50 seconds left, Councilmember Pinto, as a co-introducer.
I don't know what that time limit is, but I'll take less than that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Councilmember McDuffie, for you and your teams and all of your very hard work on this important bill. I co-introduced this amendment today with Councilmember Parker and Councilmember Bonds because I think that additional changes are still needed to make sure that we properly balance the interests of supporting our medical cannabis industry and protecting children and adolescents from potential exposure to cannabis, which we know can have long-lasting harmful impacts on young developing brains. This amendment would make 2 common sense changes to our existing cannabis laws. First, it would ensure that when a cannabis retailer applies for a license to operate a retail facility within 400 feet of a daycare center, that the daycare center has the opportunity to participate in the protest process, a process that we have carried out for a long time in our city and do so regularly for other establishments. The ability to participate in the protest process is important, not to necessarily prevent a facility from opening, but to ensure that the concerns of the community can be taken into account, often resulting in a settlement agreement that can be negotiated with the licensee to address those concerns. Second, this amendment would strengthen protections around packaging to ensure that it is not inappropriately attractive to children. This amendment prohibits cannabis product packages from resembling commercially available food that appeals to children, including snacks, gummy bears, lollipops, gummies, popcorn, chocolate bars, baked goods, and beverages. This is in direct response to problematic cannabis product packaging that has become all too common, where cannabis products closely resemble a bag of candy or chips that you would buy in a grocery store. As Councilmember Parker accurately points out, 14 other states have already made these common sense changes around packaging prohibitions, including Colorado and Washington, which have been national leaders in cannabis regulation. Once taken home, these cannabis product packages could easily be confused for their food counterparts by an unknowing child or teenager. Additionally, this amendment would ban cannabis packaging from including images of toys, animals, or children, which may unduly attract adolescents. I want to underscore that I fully support and have worked for years with colleagues to help build a thriving medical cannabis industry in the district, which has suffered greatly due to the proliferation of many illegal cannabis and gifting shops. The goal is not and should not be viewed as being at odds with our simultaneous goal of ensuring that adolescents are not inappropriately exposed to cannabis products. We know that medical cannabis has immense medical benefits for adults, and we want to create those avenues for people. But cannabis use among adolescents whose brains are still developing is linked to long-lasting negative impacts. I want to lift up part of the discussion we had, Mr. Chairman, at this morning's
The member's
breakfast.
time has expired.
Okay, I was just turning to you to ask you about part of our discussion at the breakfast this morning about your and Councilmember McDuffie's potential willingness to work with Councilmember Parker, Bonds, and I on these changes, given
As I
their common
stated-
sense nature.
As I stated several times at the breakfast, I would be more than happy to work with the movers of this amendment between now and second reading. But I would ask that it be withdrawn today.
With that, Chairman, I'm willing to pull the amendment and look forward to working with you and Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you. Is there anything further with regard to this bill? Then we will proceed to vote. Yes. There is no underlying bill because there's no amendment. I'm confused. So first of all, I recognized you, Councilmember Pinto, for 50 seconds because that was left with Mr. Parker's time. Because ordinarily, the way things go is somebody moves the amendment and then I turn to the sponsor of the legislation, which would be either me or Mr. McDuffie, since it came out of both of our committees. I believe you spoke for 3 minutes. So essentially, you would be asking for a second round now. All right, 2 minutes for Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to share that I strongly support our medical cannabis industry and believe that it is important to be accessible and safe for adults who need it or want it. And I'm really grateful again to you and Councilmember McDuffie for all of your work on this bill. I think you've made a series of changes that will make this program stronger, including ensuring that ABCA consider proximity to daycares when determining the appropriateness of the initial license, expanding the prohibition around schools from 300 feet to 400 feet, prohibiting cannabis safe use treatment facilities from opening summer gardens within 400 feet of a daycare, giving ABCA additional tools to shut down unlicensed establishments, and many others. As I mentioned previously, I believe that additional changes are needed between now and second reading to get that balance right between supporting a legal medical cannabis market and to support our families and our neighborhoods. I look forward to working with you all on all of those improvements. And lastly, just want to reiterate how many problems are still associated with the illegal cannabis shops. Many of the signs, many of the complaints that I hear about and that I see are around signage, for instance, and putting up images of products on the street. That is all illegal activity. That should be enforced. I was very distressed to see recent reporting that ABCA only has one inspector and that has closed down one cannabis shop. That needs to increase to support the medical market and to support our entire city as these shops are illegal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have the bill before us. All those in favor of the bill, Bill 25-581, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure for consideration is on page 5. It's item 2, Citizen Review Panel, Elizabeth Moeller Reappointment Resolution 2024, PR 25-483. I removed this from consent because I checked with my staff following the markup at the Committee of the Whole, and I need to move an oral amendment. It would change the expiration of the term to April 11th, 2026. That's the sum total of my amendment is to change the term expiration so that it reads April 11th, 2026. If there's no objection, that amendment will be accepted. And then we have the resolution as amended before us. Slow me down if I'm moving too fast. The vote will be on PR 25-483 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is on page 6. Bill 25-868, the Family Rehousing Stabilization Program Protection Temporary Amendment Act of 2024. Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the second reading of the temporary measure we passed unanimously just before recess. The legislation maintains our existing law on rapid rehousing, which requires that if funding is available in the rapid rehousing program, DHS would not exit families from their housing without due process. The council has passed versions of this legislation several times, but the mayor stripped funding from the program and blocked council efforts at reform in the budget, so the money isn't there right now for implementation. More importantly, we must focus on what is happening to families in our city. The mayor proposed cutting all housing assistance for over 2,000 families in rapid rehousing, even though they cannot afford to pay rent in this city. These families now face imminent eviction and displacement. Through council funding and federal voucher designations at the DC Housing Authority, we collaborated to identify permanent housing for the majority of those families. We did this because we recognize the dire impact of displacement on families, especially children, and because we recognize the burden on taxpayers who end up paying more to assist people who are displaced than to keep them housed. Despite our efforts, the administration has decided to cut off housing assistance for families while they wait for permanent housing that we have already funded. Now the administration has publicly blamed the council for this outcome. My team, the chairman, and the budget office worked around the clock during the budget season to find money to protect these families from eviction and displacement. Part of our work involved rebuilding DCHA's budget in consultation with them based on spending projections they provided and confirmed. We added money where they expected to spend more, and money they didn't think they were going to spend, we reinvested in vouchers. Now, months after the budget process ended, and after the council navigated several other hurdles that the administration put up, the administration claims that the budget information we received from DCHA was inaccurate, alleging that the council failed to do its due diligence. I want to be clear. The council relies on agencies to tell us how much they plan to spend. And when we develop a budget based on that data, we have several votes on it. Neither the mayor nor the CFO raised concerns at any of those opportunities or for 3 months after the fact. What is happening here is clear. The administration is engaging in finger pointing at the council, myself, and my team, the people who were working to find solutions to this crisis. The mayor still has the power to change course. I appreciate the chairman and several colleagues for insisting that we extend families in the rapid rehousing program since we funded permanent housing vouchers that become available in 2 weeks. If agency spending projections have changed post-budget, we should not let families in a failing program suffer the consequences. We must not leave taxpayers to bear the burden. 30 seconds, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
We must not leave taxpayers to bear the burden, nor should we waste time blaming others. We need to find solutions. That's what we're here to do. With that said, I move the Family Rehousing Stabilization Program Protection Temporary Amendment Act of 2024, and I'd urge my colleagues to continue supporting this measure. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. I would like to add to your statement that yesterday I pulled up all the letters that we received from the mayor while we were considering the budget. These were letters sent in May and June, and some of the letters were rather lengthy, objecting to numerous provisions in the budget. Nothing was said, not a single word was said with regard to the rapid rehousing or the vouchers that we were funding. Is there further discussion on this measure? We have the bill before us, Bill 25-868. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I believe that gets us to the non-consent agenda. And the first measure is Bill 25-240, United Negro College Fund Real Property Tax Abatement Extension Amendment Act of 2024. Councilmember McDuffie.
So moved.
Is there discussion?
Chairman,
Councilmember.
thank
That's
you.
what I said, Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes, thank you very much, Councilmember McDuffie, and Chairman for assisting in getting this measure fully funded in FY '25. UNCF's headquarters is an anchor on 7th Street for Progression Place. The abatement was in place for many years, and this legislation simply reinstates it. This project itself was meant to anchor the entire area with UNCF as one of the anchor tenants. And when it originally opened, there was supposed to be another tenant that significantly contributed to supporting the corridor, but pulled out at the last minute. And as such, the existence of this tax abatement is very much tied to the existence of the entire Progression Place development, which includes housing and also includes ownership spaces for small businesses, including Wanda's on 7th, which has been there for many, many years. And had they not been provided this opportunity, it would have been pushed out of the neighborhood a long time ago. The project isn't perfect. Small businesses there still struggle, and we need to do more for them. But providing this financial support to UNCF ensures that one of our country's most important organizations in ensuring higher education for African-American students can thrive right there in Shaw. So thank you all. I look forward to moving forward with this abatement.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion regarding this?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
It wasn't fast enough. Councilmember
No.
Parker and then Councilmember Bonds.
Yes, and this, I will direct it to Councilmember McDuffie as the chair of the committee that has oversight here. Is it your understanding, based on what Councilmember Nadeau just shared, as well as your committee's work, that without this abatement, it may jeopardize the great work of the United Negro College Fund?
Yes.
Yes. And I share that because I know there is a higher threshold for today's vote, and I'm truly hoping that committees will stand up for this very important organization. So as Councilmember Nadeau said, it can continue its great work in our Shaw community. Thank you.
Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just wanted to ask Councilmember McDuffie, what is the value of this abatement? Value meaning how much this is going to cost us on an annual basis.
Let me check the record. Give me 1 second. I'll answer that
Okay.
question, okay?
All right, sure.
In the fiscal impact statement, wouldn't it?
There's a fist associated with it, but I just don't have it handy. So let me get
Okay.
it and I'll answer
You
that
can
question
get it
later.
to me later. That's fine. I just want to make sure that we know we're spending our money for good things.
Councilmember Bonds, as you know, it was funded in the budget. When we
Mhm.
adopted the budget, we funded this,
Okay. you want me-
continuing this abatement. My
me to go
recollection
through
was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
I understand all of that, and I'll
You're
look
just looking for
through
a real
this.
number.
I'll look through this that we submitted, the 48 pages, and I'll find it. Will it be specific to this
Never know.
abatement, or will it be covered in abatements?
So I have it. It's
Okay.
$515,000 for FY 25, 2.1 million over the financial plan. Obviously, not insignificant given the tough financial times the district's facing. However, given the history of the organization's work with students, particularly Black students, and really facilitating the ability of thousands to go to college, I think it is well worth the investment by the District of Columbia to continue to support this organization.
Thank you very much, and I have no question that it is a good investment. I just wanted the public to understand that this is how we are spending our money, because when we think about it, we have numerous business grants that are bringing new businesses hopefully into the community and preserving existing businesses. And this is a business, our enterprise, that we also want to keep. So thank you very much for that.
And thank you. And just I think it's well worth noting that this is a continuing abatement that actually ended in 2022, which really should have not have ended. And we've had discussions with the organization about really staying on top of the abatement. But to your point about business, they also supported, and I think Councilmember Nadeau already noted this, a number of businesses along that historic Georgia Avenue, 7th Street corridor in Shaw. So extraordinarily important work that they're doing. And we want to continue to support the UNCF in that location in particular.
I'm going to jump in here and make a point because several members have talked about how worthwhile UNCF is, and to be sure it is. But in my view, that's not the reason for an abatement, because there are a lot of organizations that we think are wonderful, or we could think are wonderful, and we could be saying piecemealing that we'll do abatements for this one and that one and so forth. There are reasons for this. First of all, as just noted, this was an abatement that was previously approved, and it was time limited, and so it expired, and so we're renewing it. That's a distinguishing factor. But in addition, as Councilmember Nadeau pointed out, there is a history to how this project got developed, and this abatement was an important part of the development of the project. And I just want to emphasize, so this is not, even though it's about UNCF, it's not about UNCF. It's about this property and the history behind this property and how it got developed.
I thank
And
you
I'm
very
looking at you,
much.
but I'm not really just
Oh, you're
targeting
looking at
you. I'm actually thinking of several members who said wonderful things about the organization, but that's not the basis for which we give tax abatements.
And I appreciate that, Chairman. But for me, it's important to also understand that this is a business that was anchoring this building in this very important community.
Yes,
So let's put that on the record as well.
yes,
Thank you so much.
yes. If there's nothing further, we've managed to spend a lot of time debating this. The vote will be on Bill 25-240. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't hear any no votes. The ayes are unanimous. The next measure is PR 25-954. Council Period 25 Rules of Organization and Procedure and Appointment of Committee Chairpersons and Membership Amendment Resolution of 2024. What this resolution does is it amends our rules that we initially adopted at our organizational meeting in January of 2023. It would eliminate this resolution will eliminate the Committee on Recreation, Libraries, and Youth Affairs, transfer the jurisdiction of the subject matter and agencies to the Committee of the Whole. This resolution will establish a subcommittee, the Subcommittee on Recreation and Community Affairs. It will also establish a subcommittee on Libraries and Youth Affairs, both of which will be under the Committee of the Whole. This resolution will amend Council Period 25 Appointment and Chairperson Pro Tem, blah, blah, long title, short title, whatever, to appoint the chairpersons and members of the Subcommittee on Recreation and Community Affairs and the Subcommittee on Libraries and Youth Affairs. And this resolution also will authorize outside counsel to assist in the investigation of Councilmember Trayon White. Why am I not finding? I never remember. Where is it? Who's the people? Yeah. Where? The chairperson of the Subcommittee on Libraries and Youth Affairs will be Zachary Parker, and its members shall be Anita Bonds and Robert White. The chairperson of the Subcommittee on Recreation and Community Affairs will be Matt Fruman, and its members will be Kenyon McDuffie and Brianne Nadeau. So that's the resolution, and I so move it. Is there discussion?
Yeah, and I have D.
I'm hearing noise. The vote will be on PR 25-954. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any no votes?
Chairman, please mark me as present.
Councilmember Trayon White will be marked as present. Hearing no votes, the resolution is approved unanimously.
Can you mark me as present as well?
What's that?
Can you mark me as present as well?
The resolution is approved unanimously with Councilmembers Trayon White and Kenyon McDuffie marked as present. Give me just a second. We'll turn now to reading and vote on emergency legislation. The first measure is fiscal year 2025 income tax secured revenue bond, general obligation bond, and general obligation and income tax secured bond anticipation note issuance authorization. We have the declaration resolution, which is PR 25-937. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Chairman. As we take up every year about this time, this emergency legislation will ensure that the District of Columbia can issue bonds in a timely manner to provide funding for the district for capital projects approved and undertaken pursuant to the district's fiscal year 2025 budget and financial plan. So I move the declaration for approval.
Thank you, Councilman McDuffie. The declaration is before us. Is there discussion? By voice vote, all those in favor of the resolution, PR 25-937, say aye.
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 Opposed? I hear no votes. The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying measure, which is the actual approval resolution, PR 25-938. Councilmember McDuffie.
So move.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I'm not leaving until we get a better vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-962, Local Rent Supplement Program Contract Number 2024, LRSP 05A, with Congress LIHTC Owner LLC, Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Chairman. The DC Housing Authority sent us this legislation so that they can commit local vouchers to a future all-affordable apartment building in Noma. As you know, DCHA works with the Department of Housing and Community Development to award various kinds of subsidies to affordable housing projects through a coordinated solicitation. Lately, we've been getting housing subsidy contracts that trace back to a solicitation process that agency started in 2021. In this case, MacArthur Development worked with Community Connections to prepare an apartment building for 1109 Congress Street Northeast in Ward 6. They want to build 69 apartments, all of which will be permanent supportive housing with services for people making less than 30% of the area median income. Among other subsidies, DCHA will contribute about $2.1 million per year to cover rent. The project is also slated to receive Housing Production Trust Fund dollars, though the contract will probably come to us for passive approval. Our affirmative approval is required for today's housing voucher contract because it's structured as a multi-year agreement, and those trigger special counsel approval rules under federal law. Based on the details DCHA has provided us, I recommend approving this contract resolution. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there discussion? The vote will be on the declaration. PR 25-962. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't hear any no votes. The ayes have it unanimously. Bill 25-950, the underlying bill, Councilmember Robert White.
So moved.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Next measure is PR 25-955, retired firefighter and police officer redeployment extension emergency declaration resolution of 2024. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The council passed the Retired Firefighter and Police Officer Redeployment Emergency Amendment Act of 2023 on December 5th, 2023, to allow retired firefighters and police officers to be employed at the Office of Unified Communications without being subject to an annuity offset. The temporary measure is set to expire on October 12th, 2024, and to maintain this exception that allows for a highly qualified group of individuals to serve in critical positions at OUC. I ask that my colleagues vote to extend this legislation before the permanent measure, which will be marked up later this month by the Committee on Library, excuse me, not libraries. The Committee on Labor and Executive Administration goes into effect. There have already been retired firefighters who have been hired under the emergency, and so it's important for us to maintain continuity here for their employment. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. The declaration is before us. Is there discussion? On the declaration? Oh, Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank you, Councilmember Henderson, for moving this bill. I continue my enthusiastic support for it. And as we continue to think creatively about filling vacancies at our important public safety agencies, including OUC, FEMS and MPD and others, I think retirement is a really creative and effective way to go. And so appreciate you moving this bill and look forward to exploring with colleagues in the coming weeks and months additional tools to increase attractiveness for hiring and for retention. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion? The vote will be on PR 25-955. The declaration, all those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The underlying bill, Bill 25-938, Councilmember Henderson.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Don't hear any no votes. The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-951. Director of the District Department of Transportation, Sharon Kirschbaum, confirmation emergency declaration resolution of 2024. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And if I might just proactively ask for an additional minute of time. PR 25-723 was introduced by Chair Mendelson at the request of the mayor on April 10th. It was referred to the committee on April 19th, 2024. And the committee held a public roundtable on the measure on June 20th, 2024. The resolution would confirm Acting Director Kirschbaum's appointment as the permanent director for the District Department of Transportation. If confirmed, Director Kirschbaum would serve at the pleasure of the mayor. The committee voted 4-0 to approve her nomination yesterday. Because the nomination would be deemed approved on September 22nd, I think it's important that the council affirmatively consider her nomination. For some brief background on the nominee, Acting Director Kirschbaum began her career at Solomon Brothers in 1992 as a training specialist. After receiving her master's in business administration in 1998 from the Wharton School, she worked at Fannie Mae until 2000 as senior business analyst. Acting Director Kirschbaum had her first role in government with the city of Philadelphia as the deputy budget director and director of special projects from 2000 to 2004, where she helped manage the introduction of the nation's first ever municipal car sharing program. After returning to Fannie Mae for 2.5 years, Acting Director Kirschbaum accepted her first position in district government as the CAPSTAT program manager within the city administrator's office. She next served as the Deputy Chief Procurement Officer within the district's Office of Contracting and Procurement before working at the U.S. Department of Treasury. In 2015, she returned to the district government as Chief Operating Officer of the Department of Human Services, and in October 2021, she joined DDOT as Deputy Director, a position she held for 2 years before being selected as its interim and now acting director. I think that 4 themes emerged from Director Kirschbaum's professional background materials and during our conversation and discussion at the June Roundtable that I want to highlight. First, throughout her career, Acting Director Kirschbaum has displayed a deep commitment to public service, serving at both the local and federal level. Second, Director Kirschbaum has amassed valuable experience in financial management and planning, which I think is an asset to her when managing DDOT, an agency with an operating budget of nearly $200 million and a capital budget of nearly $1 billion. Third, the nominee has a strong background in personnel management and human resources, since the job of the director is largely to manage the staff effectively. During the roundtable, we talked about the particular challenges DDOT staff face and some of the efforts the acting director has already taken to promote employee wellness and retention and fight burnout. Finally, I found the nominee to be responsive, candid, and generally willing to collaborate to improve the functioning of government and the lives of district residents. Under Acting Director Kirschbaum's leadership, there are several areas in which DDOT is moving in the right direction. The investments and work on bus priority lanes are crucial to speeding transit across our city and reducing clogged streets. The upgrade to every single streetlight across the district provides more efficient and responsive lighting on our streets, our sidewalks, and our alleys. The agency is willing to innovate with technology to test new ideas and adapt, everything from automated sidewalk inspections to using public space differently to support more green space or retail space. Now, to be clear, I've also had my share of disagreements, strong disagreements, with the nominee during her tenure. Most recently, I'm incredibly disappointed that DDOT did not proactively work with WMATA to plan around the wind down of the circulator. We knew this was coming. The council provided a year's worth of funding in 2023, and on top of that, the council passed legislation requiring monthly reports to encourage the two agencies to start working together. But DDOT, or perhaps more directly, the executive branch, did not plan for the circulator's ending. Now, riders who relied on the circulator service to get around the district and circulator workers who rely on their paychecks to support their families are left in the lurch. This will continue to be a focus of the committee with a roundtable hearing, including DDOT, taking place likely on September 26th. On another note, during the most recent budget process, I was frustrated to learn about the removal of protected bike lanes from the proposed redesign of Connecticut Avenue Northwest. Despite millions of dollars of investments, we haven't made progress to reduce roadway fatalities through Vision Zero. And I'd like to see greater urgency around expansions of our sidewalks and bicycle network, which are often deprioritized in favor of more car-centered design choices. I know that some folks here today or at home are wondering why the policy disagreements I just mentioned don't translate into a no vote today. As I stated back during the roundtable on Acting Director Kirschbaum, my test of whether or not to support a nominee has never been whether I agree with every decision they make. If that were the case, there's probably not a single department director that I would ever support.
Councilmember, you've been 4 minutes.
May I have 30 more seconds, Mr. Chair?
Without objection.
Thank you. What I do absolutely need is a director who's responsive to oversight and feedback. In my experience, after every single one of those decisions that I just mentioned where I disagreed with the director, I could still pick up the phone and have a productive conversation with Acting Director Kirschbaum about how we move forward from here. And in many of those cases, I've been successful in getting DDOT closer to what the council or residents have been asking for. I cannot overstate how rare and refreshing that kind of inter-branch working relationship is. And second, I was struck by the number of witnesses who testified or residents who spoke to me in support of the nominee, even while criticizing certain decisions she made, and in doing so, based their support for her confirmation on her availability and professionalism. So I know I'm at time. So in closing, Mr. Chair, I expect the nominee to be a stronger leader of this agency to make meaningful progress on Vision Zero. The state of our roadway safety in the district is unacceptable. Related to that goal, the director must maintain and expand the district's sidewalk inventory and prioritize maintenance and repairs. And regardless of one's primary mode of transportation, we all walk and roll at some point in our journeys, so sidewalk connectivity needs to be a larger focus. Similarly, DDOT's got to make better evidence-based decisions regarding our bicycle network. For its part, the committee will continue to push the agency in a direction consistent with its own transportation philosophy. I do believe we have a partner and a capable administrator in Director Kirschbaum, and I'll be voting in favor of her confirmation today, and I ask my colleagues to join me in approving this resolution on an emergency basis. With that, Mr. Chairman, I move the deck.
Thank you, Councilman Brown. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion? Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Councilmember Allen, for your statement and for your work with DDOT and with Director Kirschbaum. I want to thank the director and DDOT for their work to care for our city's diverse network of transportation infrastructure, from our roads, bridges, sidewalks, and alleys to our trails, bike lanes, and our trees. As Director Kirschbaum assumes her role as permanent director for the agency, I want to highlight a few key priorities that I hope the agency will advance under her tenure. The Traffic Safety Input TSI process is a critical tool to ensure the agency is responsive to needs across the city. And I really appreciate the recent improvements to this process, and I urge DDOT to continue working to ensure TSI requests are resolved in a timely manner. Many requests relate to serious safety challenges that need to be addressed promptly, and I'll draw your attention to TSIs for our traffic circles, especially around DuPont and Logan circles, and requests for safety improvements along 15th Street from ANC's 2B and 2F and Massachusetts Avenue from ANC's 2C and 2G. I share Councilmember Allen's concern about the circulator and the planning to ease that transition for many bus riders across the district are reliant on those routes. I still remain cautiously hopeful that we'll be able to work something out with the absorption of some more WMATA routes to make up for those circulator losses. But more needs to be done and shared with the public as soon as possible. Sidewalk Palooza is beginning in a few days, and I also want to draw attention to the need to reduce our sidewalk repair times, especially when issues prohibit accessibility. Relatedly, I urge DDOT to continue its work to enhance safety infrastructure around our schools. Thank you again to DDOT for moving on the Ross Elementary safety improvements. I hope to see a continued focus and prioritization of school safety improvements, especially at KIPS Shaw Campus, Hardy Middle School, and Seton Elementary School. I congratulate DDOT for another round of record ridership for Capital Bike Share and hope to see more stations in Ward 2. With bike ridership growing, I urge DDOT to stay focused on building a robust network of connected and protected bike lanes throughout the city. And I thank DDOT for its efforts to engage the community on safety improvements and urge the agency to stay engaged even after official completion to allow for fine tuning once these projects are complete. Oftentimes we have additional input that needs adjustment. Ensuring the public has a chance for this input is essential. DDOT's ward specialists are also a wonderful model for other agencies to ensure that each ward receives the responsiveness that it deserves from an agency. Thank you to Christoph Wassmer, our wonderful Ward 2 specialist at DDOT. And finally, as we consider the health and safety of our transportation network, we must also protect against impacts of excessively loud sounds on the health of our residents. And I urge Director Kirschbaum to establish a pilot sound camera program to address excessive vehicle noise on our roadways near residential areas. I'll be supporting today's nomination and look forward to working with Director Kirschbaum and her team as we move forward on the many district priorities we have with DDOT. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further on the declaration, Councilmember Lewis George.
Thank you, Chairman. Yesterday, I voted alongside with my colleagues of the Committee on Transportation Environment in favor of Director Kirschbaum's appointment in the committee markup. Because of her responsiveness, both to me as a council member, but responsiveness to community when we've asked her to come to community, her team or herself have shown up in those regards. And that presence has made a difference. At the same time, I noted that I was disappointed in DDOT's diminished what I call transparency over the past 2 years, and Acting Director Kirschbaum to make several public, and I asked Acting Director Kirschbaum to make several public commitments. I was very pleased to report that within hours, Acting Director Kirschbaum sent a letter to the committee sort of answering the questions I and others posed to her at our committee markup yesterday. She said they will be reopening the TSI submission on October 1st. She noted they will be holding a public meeting on September 19th to discuss the circulated elimination and how we can work forward together on that. She noted that DDOT would be moving forward with the Grant Circle redesign project and bringing updated plans to the community this fall. She shared the fiscal year 25 plan to address alleys when it is complete. And and reassigning school crossing guards in October based on available staffing. These were a number of the issues that we raised as sort of wanting to clear the transparency. And again, within hours, she was responsive and transparent about what direction DDOT was going to take in those notions. Additionally, my team spent a lot of time on the Safe Routes to School Act early in my tenure, and Director Kirschbaum made a commitment to fully realizing Safe Routes to School Act and has done that work. And her team and the Safe Routes team has been committed to that work. And so for those reasons, and, you know, based on her prompt responses, but also her leadership thus far, I will vote in favor of Acting Director Kirschbaum's nomination today. And I look forward to working with her, her team, and my community of ANC commissioners and parents alike to make sure our streets are safe for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further on this declaration? Excellent. We have the declaration before us, PR 25-951. Can we have seriousness on the dais, please? We have the declaration before us, PR 25-951. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't hear any no votes. The ayes have it unanimously. The underlying resolution, PR 25-952, Councilmember Allen.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure before us is PR 25-939, contract number PO GF 2024 C0001 NJH with Alucian Company LLC, Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2024. I'm moving this, so moved. This is a contract between Alucian Company LLC and the University of the District of Columbia in the amount of $3,181,429 for a period of 36 months from the date of award. Under the proposed contract, Lucian will renew and provide software licensing, application hosting, and maintenance to support UDC's Banner Enterprise Resource Planning System that houses UDC's financial management system, including student records, vendor and student payment information, and class enrollment management. There are no option periods. This contract requires active council approval as it exceeds 1 year. It is being moved on an emergency basis because UDC needs the contract in place before the period of performance begins on October 1st, 2024. As I said, so moved. Is there discussion on the declaration? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Aye.
Albeit.
We'll try it this way. Are there any no votes?
You want some?
I don't hear any no votes. The ayes have it unanimously. We have the underlying resolution PR 25-940. So moved. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Adjustment of building restriction line in square 2950 along the southern side of Fern Street Northwest, SR 23-06301, Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2024. Councilmember Louis George.
Thanks. Chairman, I request to move PR 2250947B 250933, which are emergency measures to prevent a time gap in the law. The temporary measure currently in effect expires on October 12th, 2024, and the final reading of the permanent bill was just voted upon in our consent agenda.
That's it?
Yes. Clicking.
We've previously adopted this and it went to
Yes.
committee of the whole.
That's right.
All right, discussion. On the declaration, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? I don't hear any no votes. The ayes have it unanimously. On the underlying measure, which is Bill 25-933, Councilmember Louis George,
So moved.
discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have a temporary bill, Bill 25-939, Retired Firefighter and Police Officer Redeployment Extension Temporary Amendment Act 2024. Councilmember Henderson,
1 second, Mr. Chairman.
you could just say so moved.
Oh, yeah, so moved. I just wanted to make sure they didn't write something additional. So moved.
Well, I'm going to ask if there's any objection to extending the period of time for your remarks. We have the temporary before us. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
That was not me.
But you know what? I missed the window earlier. Just give it to me, okay? I'm very pleased to support this legislation. I'm glad it's before us today and was a co-introducer of the original. The reason I wanted to speak today is because we all know that there are a number of serious issues at OUC. And we've been talking about them for over a year. And I want to be clear here. Council is doing what we can to address the deficiencies at OUC. Councilmember Henderson introduced the bill we're voting on today. Councilmember Pinto has introduced legislation, which I've also co-introduced, that would require public release of after-action reports. She's also going to be holding oversight hearings this fall, including one jointly with my committee on the topics of emergency dispatch technology deficiencies. And I introduced legislation last year that would separate fire and emergency medical calls from police calls to improve dispatch and services for residents, which I hope also receives a hearing before the end of this council period. What I am not seeing is the same sense of urgency from the executive branch. And they are, in fact, the ones responsible for running OUC. They're not leveling with the public, not being transparent about the problems. We're seeing tragedies of death and near tragedies, dropped calls, misdirected responses, wrongly classified emergencies, understaffing, technology issues, waiting minutes for a call taker to pick up routinely, not just occasionally, and poor training for call takers. Residents are now scared that if they call, 911 won't answer. We'll send them to the wrong address or we'll share the wrong info with fire or MPD. And despite all of that, the executive has found excuses and refuses to share data and facts. In fact, I wrote a letter to OUC in July asking for data about a slew of 911 mistakes in Ward 1, and I've been offered a briefing, but have still received no acknowledgement of my request for data, which is not the picture of an agency or administration that's taking this seriously. So today, Councilmember Henderson's legislation will help with the critical shortage of staff. Every week, multiple shifts are significantly understaffed. In July, only 8 out of 66 shifts were properly staffed, and that means 7 out of every 8 shifts were not staffed to function properly. That leads to long waits for 911 calls to be picked up. It leads to mistakes, especially as staff are asked to work more overtime due to the understaffing. Retired firefighters know the city, they know its streets, they know its geography, they know medical protocol and fire EMS protocol, and they know who is needed and how quickly. So let's make it possible for those who still want to serve to do so without financial penalty. Thank you. I look forward to supporting this measure.
Thank you, Councilmember Nadeau. Is there anything further on the temporary? Vote will be on the temporary Bill 25-939. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I believe that's going to complete the business for this meeting. The next legislative meeting is scheduled for October 1st, 2024. Probably, but not necessarily, there will be a committee of the whole meeting as well. In fact, probably at the October 1st legislative breakfast, I'll discuss the meeting schedule through the fall, which will be roughly twice a month. So we can take care of legislation and not stay all day. Councilmember Bonds. I'm going to wind up this meeting. There being no further business, the time being 4:23 PM, this meeting is adjourned.